Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, and today we're going to talk about UFC 300. Alex Poatan Pereira versus Jamahal Sweet Dreams Hill for the UFC 205-pound title. Just an unbelievable card from start to finish. One of the best fight cards of all time. I got an incredible show planned, some amazing guests. So without further ado,
let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business.
Main event of the evening for the light heavyweight belt. We got the champ, Alex Poatan Pereira. He's 9-2, taking on the former champ, Jamahal Sweet Dreams Hill, who's 12-1. And currently, they got it. Alex Pereira -130. The comeback on Jamahal Hill is +110. And joining me to break down the UFC 300 main event is the #1 contender in the welterweight division. I'm talking about Belal. Remember the name Muhammad, longtime friend of the show. Belal, welcome back to Half the Battle.
What's up, brother? Appreciate you calling me back on for this one. This is the fight to talk about.
It sure is, man. And both these guys are amazing. They have young careers. Like, I know Alex is like 36 and whatnot, but 9-2 as a pro in MMA, has already won belts in 2 weight classes, won belts in 2 weight classes in a separate sport as well. Jamahal Hill came into the UFC, less than 10 pro fights. He won his first belt. He broke the striking output record his last fight. Like, these are 2 guys that might go down as legends when it's all said and done.
Yeah, 100%, man. I still remember back when, like 2 years ago, when Jamahal would just like come to all the events by himself, and there was an event where he was there, and I think it was like the UFC X, and like they didn't have a table for him out there, and he just came by himself. It was just chilling with all the fans and stuff like that. I'm like, bro, he's like such a good people person. I'm like, why does this guy not have a table? And it's cool to see him 2 years later with the belt in his hand and becoming a champion. And it's like he believed in himself before anybody else believed in him.
I mean, that's sometimes what it all comes down to. And it's amazing. I guess the big question here, man, if you're Jamahal Hill, what's your approach to take on someone with the presence and the aura of Poatan?
Honestly, I think Jamahal is doing a great job. Like, he's so confident. I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of guys, when they fight Alex, they're so afraid of his striking, right? Or they overthink his striking. Jamahal is going in here with the mindset of, I don't know why people think I have to wrestle to beat him. I know how I can knock him out. I have more power than he does. And I do think he does. I think Jamal's hands are so fast and he hits so hard. You just could go back to the Johnny Walker fight when he hit him on top of the head and he just flatlined him. There's not a guy that Jamahal lands clean on that they're just still standing there. Even Glover Teixeira, who's Alex's coach, longtime training partner, he was in there with him, and he keeps a great guard, but Jamahal landed some hard head kicks on him. He brought a new tool out to the game. And when Jamahal hits you, it hurts. And I think for Alex, he gets hit a lot. We've seen it in a lot of his fights. There's not a lot of fights, like Jamahal said, there hasn't been one fight where you looked at him and he like outclassed somebody. Even against Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva was throwing bombs back at him, landing a couple shots here and there. And it's like, if Jamal's landing those same shots on you, he's going to put you to sleep.
Belal, what's interesting to me about Jamahal is that he obviously has that one-hitter quitter, like you mentioned. I mean, his nickname is Sweet Dreams for a reason, but he's got the output of a little guy. And I've never seen that at 205 before. And I noticed this in his debut when he went up against Darko Stosic, put a 3-round clinic on him, hit 100 significant strikes. I'm like, okay, who's this guy? And then fast forward to the title fight against Glover. Dude, he put up Max Holloway numbers. He attempted over 400 strikes. He landed 250 strikes. Like, this is unheard of at 205. We're talking about a division, Belal, that John Jones ruled for over 10 years. We're talking about a division that had Chuck Liddell, Rashad, Forrest Griffin, Shogun, Machida, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Jamahal broke the striking record. Like, that's something to be said.
And he took that fight on short notice. People keep forgetting about that. And people look at his body and say that, he's fat or he's out of shape and how this guy's an athlete. But, bro, I sparred with him. He moves so good for a big guy. And he told me, yeah, don't worry. I'm not going to hit you hard. It's like those are hard training partners to find, right? Especially guys like him, because they just have such natural power. But for him to know how to hold it back and for him to move with me and to keep up the volume that I keep up, and we were just flowing. He had a beautiful flow, and that was literally right when he came back from his injury. So, 6 or 7 weeks later, I can only imagine how smooth he is now. And he doesn't move like a big guy. He doesn't have the volume of a big guy. He moves like a little guy, but he hurts like a big guy.
I'm glad you brought up the physique. I'm so happy you brought that up because that's the one thing that people criticize. And I don't know if you remember this, but remember when the Super Bowl was going on and that picture leaked of Patrick Mahomes with his shirt off, right? And he had the dad bod and like, dude, Patrick Mahomes is an elite athlete. Like people are trying to act like Jamahal is like big country Roy Nelson or some stuff. Like he's going to swing one overhand right, then he's going to gas out and do the whole bit. Like I think people aren't aware of the kind of athlete Jamahal is. And he reminds me of Patrick Mahomes in that sense.
Bro, like when we played basketball, I know, he got injured during it, but, we played a couple times before that. And he was the most athletic guy out there. His speed, his jump shot, his movement. Like, bro, he's so fast on his feet. He has such quick hands, quick, movement, lateral movement, everything. He has it all. He literally has, his physique may not show it, but, bro, he's a true athlete. He's a beast. Like he literally could have probably played ball in college, played ball professionally. He's that good.
Yeah, look, it's just a case where Jamahal just can't have a six-pack. That's just his physique. It just is what it is. But people need to relax, acting like this is big country Nelson or something like that. Like, dude, this guy broke the striking record in a division that John Jones ruled for over 10 years. That's all I need to say. So what I'm concerned about, you know what I'm concerned about? That left hook, which is probably the best left hook in the business. That's what Poatan has. And his debilitating calf kicks. Now, one thing I noticed in Jamahal's last fight, well, prior to that, the guy is obviously an incredible southpaw. He's so efficient at switching his stances, but you threw a wild card in there against Glover. He comes out orthodox. I was like, okay, Jamahal. So he's proficient in both stances. You think he's going to have a little something planned here for Poatan to kind of get him off his game in that department?
Yeah, I think the switching stance is going to be huge for him right now, especially with Poatan's calf kick. That's coming off that injury. He does this to everybody. Jiri couldn't walk after that first round. It makes it different. Jan Blachowicz, it hurt them. Like that calf kick is huge, especially if he's going to come out orthodox. So Jamahal switches stances, comes high with his high kick, and comes with that straight left hand. Especially if he's trying to catch Poatan as he's throwing that calf kick, I think he can catch him, knock him out. Because like I said, Poatan, he gets hit a lot, and when he does throw that calf kick, he's not afraid to take one to give one. But the biggest thing for Jamahal is, when he hurts him, you got to be a little bit patient. Even in the Glover fight, when he had Glover against the cage a little bit, he just stood in front of him with his hands down, and Glover was throwing hooks back at him. Jamahal got hurt. Didn't get hurt, but he got hit. And especially with Poatan's left hook, you don't want to get hit with that. I've never seen really Jamahal rock that all in any of his fights, but like I don't want to test it, right? Jamal's quick enough to hop in, hop out. It's like we don't have to take one. Like use your length, use your speed to go in, go out. Don't take those calf kicks. Switch stances on him. Make it hard for Poatan to read you and read that low kick on you. And honestly, like Jamahal doesn't want to say that he wants to wrestle, but like just throw it in there. Give him something to think about. Give him a different tool. Throw all these extra tools at you. Like I was telling Brendan Allen his last fight against Chris Curtis, I'm like, throw the takedown out there just so he thinks about it, just so it gives him something to worry about, and he's not just confidently standing up with you striking, because this guy's been kickboxing his whole life, and if he goes out here thinking, all right, this is going to be a kickboxing fight, he's comfortable there. But if he goes out there thinking, man, this guy going to wrestle me, he's going to strike with me, now it gives you other ideas and other things for your nerves to get nervous about.
And I'm curious to see what happens if Jamahal happens to get on top of Poatan. Reason being, because you watched that Jiri fight against Alex, and the first round, Jiri actually took down Alex. And man, he had some nice ground and pound. All three judges scored round one, 10-9 for Jiri. Jamahal has devastating ground and pound. I think if Jamahal gets on top of Poatan somehow, that could be the end of the fight. And one thing about Jamahal, like you watch his only loss to Paul Craig, dude, he didn't even tap out. Like, that he broke his arm, then he's trying to hit him with his broken arm. The ref is the one that stopped the fight. Jamahal was down to keep fighting. Like, that's the kind of spirit and mentality this guy has, a true champion.
Yeah, he's unbreakable. Even when in a Glover fight, people are like, man, when Glover takes him down, it's over. Glover takes him down, it's over. This better not hit the ground. Glover took him down. He was able to get himself up, sweep himself back on top. Even when he rocked Glover, he wasn't afraid to go to the ground with him. He stood on top of him, hit him with a hard ground and pound. And for a guy like Alex, where we've seen him get controlled on the ground by guys like Izzy, who doesn't have really great wrestling. Izzy took him down with a body lock and pulled him out. Jamal's way bigger than Izzy. And I think if Jamal gets a hold of his waist, gets a hold of it on top of him, and he starts landing those hard shots on him, and Poatan gets up recklessly sometimes, where he gets up leaving his chin out there to get hit or get choked, Jamahal could hop on something.
And I think kind of circling back to a point you made earlier, the biggest concern I have is Jamahal just kind of getting a little too excited, getting a little carried away because he tends to land on every single person he fights. And when Jamahal smells blood, he goes for it in a way you wouldn't believe. And that's where a counter left hook and, stuff like that is what you need to look out for. So I'm going to be like screaming from my TV, like, Jamahal, like, calm down, because he goes off when he smells blood.
Yeah, and I think both guys kind of are that way. Poaton's another guy who has a lot of heart, right? Even we've seen him get rocked before and get hurt and still stand there or recover by the second round. So for Jamahal, it's the biggest key is going to be patience. And especially even for him, coming off that injury, your first fight back, you're going to get a little bit, nerves, maybe an adrenaline dump, get hyped. This is the biggest card of the year, and you're the headline. Like Jamahal was, like I said, when he got that call for it, we were like next to each other in Cali, and he was like, we don't belong here. We weren't supposed to be here. Now look at us on top. Now he's about to be the headline, the biggest card of the year. So that's going to add a lot of nerves. You're doing all these extra interviews. You're doing everything. The thing I love about him is, he's real. He doesn't have to fake anything. He doesn't have to fake a rivalry with Poatan. We saw him today ask for an autograph from him. He's chill. Hey, we're going to fight Saturday, but, I want to get this. This is a memorable thing. Let's do it. He doesn't have to fake anything, and that's the biggest key, right? You don't want to get – because when you start faking it like Kobe or some of these other guys, then you get in the cage and you're like, you have to live up to that expectation. Jamal's always going to live up to the expectation of fighting, but he doesn't have to add that extra fake stuff to get there.
So regarding the injury, because that's obviously a huge talking point, and as far as I'm concerned, Jamahal did all the right things. He moved to Vegas. Didn't Kobe Bryant's doctor clear him and whatnot? So what do you kind of make of him coming back? Do you think he's coming back too soon?
I mean, when you're working with the people at the PI, they're the best in the world. Heather is literally the best in the world. So she gave him the thumbs up. That's all you really need to know. Like I said, when I moved around with him, moving around Cali, he was moving good. He was moving smooth, moving fast. And I talk to Chef Larry also all the time, who's with him, who's been with him for the last 5 weeks. Said he's looking great. So I think Jamal is not one of those guys that, like I said, has it in his head. I don't think he's going to be in the back of his mind to be second guessing anything. Like you said, he would have freaking fought the rest of that Paul Craig fight with a broken arm. He don't care. Once he's in there, once he's in fight mode, there's no flight. It's always fight.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So if you had to take a guess, who do you think would shoot for the first takedown in this fight?
Honestly, I don't even think there's going to be any takedowns. I think this fight's going to be all stand-up. I do think one of these guys is going to get finished. It's going to be a finish. I think it's going to be a knockout. These guys both just hit so hard, and I don't think any one of these guys is going to take a step backwards. They both move forward. They both are coming for the kill every single time, and it's going to be basically who lands the cleaner shots.
No, good way to put it. So official pick. I'm going, I'd love to say and still Hill, but I'm going and new Sweet Dreams Jamahal Hill.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Jamahal. I just rewatching everything, seeing everything, and you've seen Poatan rocked a couple times. You've seen him knocked out by Adesanya. Like, I haven't seen Jamahal hurt at all besides that Paul Craig thing. And even though he was hurt, he was still going. There wasn't like anybody that I've seen rock him on the feet. And people always, when he hits them, they always have a different look in their eyes. They always think about something else. The guy that's been in there with the best guys in the world. And, Thiago Santos been in there with John Jones. Jamahal hurt him, hit him hard. You never seen Johnny Walker go to sleep like that. You never seen Glover Teixeira beat up like that, who went to war with Jiri a couple months before that. And Jamahal just made it look like it was a piece of cake. And he took it in enemy territory on short notice. I think it's going to be and new Jamahal Hill.
And let's be realistic. That Glover fight should have been stopped on multiple occasions. They just didn't want a riot to go down in Brazil,
Yeah, I mean, Glover's my guy, man. I love Glover, and I hated to see it, but I wish it would have got stopped because, I never want to see Glover beat up like that because such a good guy. But, yeah, man, sometimes you're too tough for your own good.
Yeah, and how classy is Glover telling the Brazilian crowd, like, hey, this guy's going to walk with me backstage. Like, don't boo him. Don't throw anything at him. Like, Glover's the man, dude.
Yeah, bro. Every time I see him, he's the man. He always asks me, man, when are you going to get touched out? Us nice guys, man. It takes a while, but trust me, you're going to get it. We're the nice guys. We're the nice guys. That's why I love Glover.
That's awesome, man. I agree with him. So before I get you out of here, man, you down to give me a quick pick for every fight on the card? I'll name the matchup. You just give a pick, no analysis?
For sure.
So Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan.
I'm going with Weili.
Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway.
I got to go with Justin.
Charles do Bronx versus Arman Tsarukyan.
I'm going Arman.
Bo Nickal versus Cody Brundage.
Oh, I'm going Bo.
Jiri Prochazka or Rakic?
Man, I think I'm going to go with Rakic on this one.
Calvin Kattar or Sterling?
Bro, this is my hardest pick, but I literally was just watching tape on this one right now. I think I'm going to go with Kattar.
Okay, I like that. Holm or Harrison?
Man, it's another one, right? You're expecting it to be like the Ronda Rousey fight, but I think Kayla's going to surprise a lot of people.
Diego Lopez or Sodiq Yusuff?
I think I'm going to go with Sadiq for this one.
Jalen Turner or Renato Money Moicano?
Man, I'm going to go with Jalen. Jalen's just killing it lately.
Jessica Andrade or Marina Rodriguez?
I hope it's Marina, but Jessica's a beast.
Jim Miller competing at 100, 200, and 300 or Bobby Green?
Man, I think I'm going to go with Bobby with that one.
Davison Figueredo or Cody Garbrandt?
Man, I want Cody. I like Cody. He's been looking good. I was just in Vegas. I saw him. Mentally, he's in a good place. I think Cody, he's going to remind a lot of people how good he is.
So, Belal, there's only one thing left to say. When are you challenging Leon Edwards for the undisputed welterweight belt?
Bro, I've been in Vegas like the last 5 or 6 events, and I get asked that question 55 times. Hopefully, we'll find out soon.
And let me just be sure about your plans, because the fans hate champs that are inactive, that duck contenders, that don't want to fight the best of the best. Just to be clear, you want to challenge Leon Edwards, and then you'd like your first title defense to be against the undefeated phenom, Shavkat Rakhmonov.
Yeah, 100%. If we could get Leon in Manchester and then Shavkat in Abu Dhabi, that'd be my dream situation.
Hey, he said he wants to fight Leon in England and then defend the belt against Shavkat. Say no more, Belal. I truly appreciate your time. The fans can follow you at Bully B170, and we cannot wait for you to get this well-deserved, long-awaited title shot, and for you to become champ as well.
My brother, appreciate you always.
Co-main event of the evening for the strawweight championship of the world. We got the champ, Zhang Weili. She's 24-3, taking on Xiaonan, who's 17-3. And currently, they got it. Zhang Weili minus 500. The comeback on Xiaonan is plus 375. And joining me for the first time is Art C from FightingStats.com. Art, welcome to Half the Battle.
Thanks for having me, Dan, man. I really appreciate it. Excited to break down this fight, man. This is one of my biggest bets of the card. So really passionate takes from you. Can't wait to get into it.
That's why we brought you on. And also joining me for the first time is the Jewish bettor, my man, Zach. Welcome to Half the Battle.
Thank you for having me, my man. Much appreciated. I don't got a big red glove like my man Art, but I got the fist though.
Hey, you got the red background. I got the red shirts. China versus China. You know, we came prepared. And there's a specific reason that I asked you two to be on this segment of the show. And reason being is Art has a max bet on Zhang Weili. Jewish bettor has a max bet on Xiaonan, and longtime fans of Half the Battle know that I've literally bet on Xiaonan in every single UFC fight she's had, from the debut against Kylan Curran, max betting her, to every single fight along the way up until that plus 160 against Jessica Andrade. Our golden girl is finally fighting for the UFC Strawweight Championship. If you go on Twitter and you type in best fight picks, China versus China super fight, you'll see me lobbying for this fight for like the last half decade. It's finally going down at UFC 300. Art, give us your take on this fight.
All right, man. Well, it comes down to a couple of things for me. Okay. So one is Yan, what I find she really does well is she's a good distance striker. 87% of her strikes are going to be coming from a distance. She targets the head about 80% of the time as well. And she has a 38% head strike accuracy. Really good step back counter, I find. She moves backwards. She pops the right hand on the step back counter. 67% of her strikes are going to be single strikes, though. So 28% of them are going to be jabs. 13% of them is that lead low kick that she uses. And then 10% of them are the cross. What I found with the striking was a little bit basic, where 64% of her strikes are a combination of just the single jab, the single cross, double jab, double cross, just a lot of straight punches just down the middle there. Nothing super spectacular in terms of the striking. Now, the biggest thing for me is the takedown defense for me. And so for me, it's like every single fighter that's tried to take Xiaonan down has succeeded. And so I go back and I watch, the Jessica Andrade fight. She won by knockout. That was her first knockdown in her UFC career. I put that more on Jessica Andrade. Jessica Andrade throws a triple left hook coming forward. And I talked about Yan Xiaonan. She has that nice step back counter right hand. She steps back, pops her with the right hand. Andrade goes down. I thought the referee was a little bit quick stoppage there for me. But they stopped it. They gave Yan Xiaonan that win. Again, that was the only knockdown that she's had in that UFC career. But then you go back before that, Mackenzie Dern. Again, Mackenzie Dern has great ground game, but her wrestling's not that great, right? So she kind of struggles to get the grappling going, Mackenzie Dern, but she does get her down 2 rounds. Yan Xiaonan ends up winning 3 rounds of the 5, ends up winning that decision there, right? Against Marina Rodriguez, there was no real grappling in there, so that's fine. Carla Esparza. Carla Esparza only has 1 TKO finish, and that was against Yan Xiaonan. She controlled her from start bell to bell. 292 seconds of control time that first round, 146 seconds of control time that second round, ends up ground and pounding her and finishing her in that fight. And you go back even to the Claudia Gadelha fight. Claudia Gadelha goes 2 for 5 in takedowns in that first round, wins that first round, ends up gassing and losing rounds 2 and 3, and that's how she pulls off that win, right? Carolina Kowalkiewicz before that. Angela Hill even goes 1 for 2 of takedowns. So, and even in her UFC debut against Kaylee Curran, Kaylee Curran goes 2 for 6 in takedowns. So it's just, for me, it's been a pattern of takedown defense issues for Yan Xiaonan. I know she's a great striker. She wants to keep it on the feet, but we've seen Weili Zhang just really go to the grappling really often and early now. She's really putting that as part of her game, right? She landed 6 takedowns against Amanda Lemos, and Amanda Lemos, another really good striker, takes her down to where she's weakest, grinds her out there and just dominates her on the ground there. Same thing with Joanna Jędrzejczyk, goes 3 for 5 on takedowns. Even Rose Namajunas in those earlier rounds took her down there and just sort of gassed out in the later rounds. So for me, I just think these girls are on a different level. I know Yan's sort of worked her way up to the title, got there, right? And young Weili is just on a different level, both striking and the grappling. I think if Yan has any success, it's going to have to be a step back counter right hand in the earlier rounds. And I've seen Weili take a big right hand from Lemos. I've seen some big shots. The only time Weili's really been knocked out was that head kick against Rose. So she has a decent chin to survive the earlier rounds. She has the grappling to take that late. So I think it's going to be like a 50-45 if it gets to decision, but I do think she probably wins. I think she wins by ground and pound here. I think she takes her down, controls her, and just destroys her on the ground there. So my pick, that's why I like Zhang Weili. I don't really see a ton of paths to victory for Yan, but that's why I'm on the Weili side. I did get it early, so I'm not advocating a minus 500 play. I got minus 300, so it's a little bit different at minus 300 than 500, but that's why I like that side.
I think that's fair. Jewish Bettor. So Art mentioned the pull right hand, which I think is great to mention, but you know what I've been waiting for? I've been waiting for this Yan Xiaonan sidekick to the face knockout for a long time. I mean, you've seen on her regional scene, she was hitting girls with that left and right, and it hasn't happened in the UFC yet. Just like Art said, the only time she's gotten a knockout was the Andrade fight. Now, I disagree with you about it being an early stoppage. I mean, if you ask Jessica, she didn't complain. If Jessica didn't complain, I'm not going to complain. But I'm waiting for this sidekick to the face knockout to finally happen. Jewish Bettor is Saturday night, the night it finally happens.
Oh, man, it would be nice to see Yan, Shawn Michaels, Xiaonan in the octagon, but it's a possibility. It's going to be a tough fight, and that's for sure. I think the key to victory for both girls is going to be to bait each other into one another's game, right? And that's going to be the takedowns, I think, for Yan Xiaonan, who's a good, for Weili Zhang, who's a great striker. She's been on a tear, man. This girl's absolutely dominating the strawweight division through and through. And I think Yan Xiaonan's kind of quietly been working her way up, maybe not as well known, but the girl has great footwork. That's one thing I wanted to talk about. Not just footwork, distance management, right? We watched the Marina Rodriguez fight. She's slightly out of range. She's never backing up 3-4 steps. It's always back 1-2, exit out. And I think in the big octagon, that's going to help her with the grappling, right? Because Yan Xiaonan, she's going to have to avoid the grappling in this spot. She's going to have to avoid the clinches. Once it gets to the ground, do I think she gets finished like most do? No, I'm not under that, belief, because I watch her survive on the ground with Mackenzie Dern. I think Mackenzie Dern's a way better BJJ artist than Zhang. The difference is Zhang maybe will punch a little bit more when she gets to certain positions, stay on top in certain positions. That could give Yan Xiaonan trouble. But I think she does a good job of, pulling on the head, getting away, breaking from certain clinch spots, and she's very strong in the clinch. I think people underestimate her strength there as well. But it's going to be important for her to completely avoid the grappling, right? That would be the easiest path to victory here because I think she's a better striker. I think she has better counters as well. And I think counter fighters frustrate Weili. Those takedowns are a lot easier when opponents are coming forward, when they're throwing naked kicks. And I think Xiaonan's very smart about the way she throws her feints, about the way she throws certain strikes to not be overextended. And that's going to give the opportunity for Weili Zhang to get those takedowns. So Weili's going to have to create those opportunities. And I think in those little spots is where Xiaonan is going to be able to win the fight. And I've seen Weili make mistakes the further the fight goes, time and time again. I don't, think she's the best round 4 or 5 fighter. I think she gave up rounds 4 or 5 to Rose, if I'm not mistaken. Even in the Lemos fight, man, I thought she slowed down a little bit. It's not like she's shooting 20 takedowns every round. She may not have to here, but I just don't think that's the case. I think Uriah Faber is a great coach. I loved everything I saw in the Mackenzie Dern fight. I know Dern's not the greatest wrestler, but I just think Yan's going to be able to survive, avoid these spots. And I think she's going to do a better job this time of, being able to fight in these certain spots while avoiding the takedown rather than, the fight being entirely her defending the takedown, right? She's going to have to get off offense to avoid the takedown. And I think her offense and her movement could be her defense here.
Yeah. And one point that I got to make is the improvement that both of them have made in their grappling. Zhang Weili, I mean, you remember when Rose Namajunas went out there and out-wrestled her, and Rose Namajunas is not known for her wrestling, and like a year and a half to 2 years later, all of a sudden, Zhang Weili can out-wrestle and submit Carla Esparza. So that speaks volumes to the kind of improvements, the kind of athlete, the kind of discipline. I mean, nothing but respect. But a similar, maybe not to the same extent, but a similar thing can be said about Yan Xiaonan. She looked like she didn't even, she was like a no stripe white belt when she fought Carla. You know what I'm saying? To a year or two later, she survives terrible spots against Dern. And I agree with you. Dern is not the wrestler that Zhang Weili is. None of us will give you a debate there, bro. Like that's understood. But we can all agree that Mackenzie had some spots, like she had back mount. I think she had an armbar attempt. Like she had some real spots where, like, if this was a year or two ago, if this was the same Yan Xiaonan that fought Carla, she would have 100% got submitted there. She would have got ground and pound TKO. She would have got finished. So I do agree with Jewish Bettor that, moving to California, getting outside her comfort zone in China and training with, Team Alpha Male and all of them. Listen, is she going to become a D1 wrestler in a year or two training time? No, but at least she's not a novice anymore. And surviving on the mat with Mackenzie earned her blue belt. So now we're not dealing with a no stripe white belt anymore. We're dealing with a blue belt. At least it's a step in the right direction. But I agree. I do not want Yan Xiaonan messing around on the mat with Zhang Weili whatsoever. Like, obviously, what I want is a stand-up fight. I want a distance battle. I want side kicks. I want long strikes. I want step through right hands. I want leg kicks. I want circle. I want distance. So, and again, we're dealing with a plus 375. It's not like we're talking about a pick 'em here, So, I understand like why Zhang Weili's favored. It's just we're talking about a minus 500. And I heard Art on my boy Clint's podcast. Shout out to my boy Clint. I love Clint. You're going to hear him on the Bo Nickal breakdown here in a little bit. But my boy Clint said that Dan is so convinced that Xiaonan's going to win and this and that. It's not that I'm so convinced. It's more so that this is like my prospect. This is my fighter that, like, we've literally blossomed this flower from day one against Kylan Curran. Every single fight along the way, I just have to bet her at dog odds, at insane dog odds, at the biggest dog odds she's ever been in her whole UFC career in her title fight. I cannot pass. And again, I get why Zhang Weili's favored. It's not like you're not going to get pushback from me, Art, and you're not going to get me trying to convince you differently either. It's just something I have to do, and that's it. Period. Point blank. So talk to me, Art. What are you thinking, man?
Yeah, I get it, man. You have a process. That's the cash cow, and why jump off the train now? I get it. But for me, there's reasons that they're a big favorite, and there's a reason that she's champion. I think she's going to be champion for a while there. You guys bring up the Mackenzie Dern grappling and stuff. I know she's surviving, but you talked about it. Mackenzie Dern's not going to strike there, right? She's going for submissions. She's really risking the position for submissions. She's riding the back, things like that. Weili's not going to really look for, mount, trying to get it over to back mount, things like that. She can hang out in full guard, half guard, and she'll just posture up and just rain down these elbows and stuff, right? And she's really trying to control the position, control Lemos on the ground, things like that, right? She's averaging 1.8 takedowns in round 1, 2.0 in round 2, and 1.4 in round 3. So I think she goes to that well early and often. I think Weili Yan's going to probably, I know you brought up the cardio concerns in round 3, 4, 5. I get that. But when you're on the tail, on the receiving end of getting smashed on the ground for the first 3 rounds, I would favor Weili's cardio in those later rounds there. 29% of Weili's strikes thrown and landed have been on the ground, right? So she's really she's getting there, a big ground and pound striker, a little bit different than Mackenzie Dern there. And I ask you, when's the last time Mackenzie Dern submitted somebody? That goes back to Nina Nunes in 2021. That's 6 or 7 fights ago. I know she's this great ground striker, but great ground artist, but she hasn't submitted anybody in recently, right? So I think we're giving her a little bit too much credit just for surviving on the ground with Mackenzie Dern. And again, Weili's just a different animal, different type of ground fighter. That's all I see.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, listen, I get what you're saying, how much credit can you give someone for getting their ass whooped? But for a white belt, no stripe white belt to survive on the mat with Mackenzie, I mean, it's at least worthy of a blue belt. And that's what she got. So I was happy with that. Now, Jewish Bettor, there's only been one fight where Yan Xiaonan didn't cover her price tag. And you know exactly what that was. That was the Carla Esparza fight. The only other fight that she lost was one of the best bets I've ever made that didn't cash. If you let me bet on a split decision at plus 270 odds, I will make that bet 10 times out of 10. So to me, it's not, she got robbed against Marina or this or that. To me, it's, I bet a plus 270 on a split decision. Let me keep making that bet over and over. So there's only been one time she hasn't covered her price tag. And here, there's not much of a price tag to cover. You know what I'm saying? She's a massive underdog. These odds imply that she's just going to get taken down one time and the fight's going to be over shortly after. So, and any parting words? Because, I mean, everybody knows where we stand, but any other points that you haven't brought to the table yet before we get out of here?
Yeah, there's a lot of unknowns here about how she's going to perform in the grappling aspect, but 3-1 as an underdog, 91% ROI. Those numbers don't lie. I've been on her every single one of those times, and the one loss was not a loss in all honesty. So she could very well be 4-0 as an underdog. You take out that Carla Esparza loss. I know it's there, but I think she's made significant improvements there, and I think that's why we're getting such a wide line on Weili Zhang. And we're able to get the opportunity to bet a great fighter in Yan Xiaonan, who probably isn't likely to win this fight, but I think or is getting a little disrespected at the books at this number.
Now, before I let you guys go, you guys down to do some quick picks for the rest of the card?
For sure.
So,
yeah.
So I'm going to name the matchup, and then we'll go Art. You just pick the winner, no analysis. Then we'll go Jewish Bettor. You just pick the winner, no analysis. So Alex Pereira versus Jamahal Hill.
I like Alex Pereira.
Jamahal Hill.
Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway.
I like Holloway.
I'm with you. Blessed Express, baby. Let's go.
Charles du Bronx versus Arman Tsarukyan.
I like Tsarukyan, man.
Arman.
Bo Nickal versus Cody Brundage.
Come on.
I'm not going to go crazy. I like Bo.
Well, I asked all my guests this. Are you gentlemen going to lay 25 units to win one?
Absolutely not. I'd rather, yeah.
I do have a passionate take on that fight where I think it's a little bit sneaky, but yeah, I can't lay minus 2,500. That's a little bit crazy.
What's your passionate take?
I like Bo to win by KO. I know a lot of people on the submission. I think he wins by KO. I think Brundage, just the way he reacts on the ground, we saw it in the Cedric Dumas. He just keeps close guard. He keeps controlling posture. He doesn't let you pass. So if Bo gets the guard down, he gets him down. I think Brundage just controls him, keeps close guard, and then Brundage Bo Nickal has to posture up, rain down ground and pound there. And then if it does stay standing, you get all the KO equity on the feet there. Brundage a little bit wild on the feet, so he can get knocked out or he can deal a knockout. So I like the KO aspect, a little bit better, juicier line than submission.
I just looked plus 130. So, hey, turning a minus 2,500 into a plus 130. Let's see if that
And if
cashes
you pay a
for you.
little bit extra juice, you take fight ends by KO. I think it's like plus 115, and then again you get all the Brundage, Hollywood acting, DK wins and stuff like that. So yeah, pay a little bit more juice, you get the fight ends by KO as well.
Jiri Prochazka versus Aleksandar Rakic.
I like Rakic in that one.
I'm not sure yet, but I'll go with Rakic as well. That could change.
Sterling or Kattar?
I think the size difference here. I like Kattar.
I'm on Kattar too. Let's go.
Hey, from y'all's lips to God's ears. Kayla Harrison or Holly Holm?
I gotta go Kayla. It's such a mismatch there.
I think the fight will play out closer than people think, but Kayla will win.
Diego Lopez or Sodiq Yusuff?
I like Yusuf in that.
Diego fucking Lopez, my dude. See you at the Sphere.
Jalen Turner or Renato Money Moicano?
I gotta go with Turner. He's just the physical attributes are gonna be way too much.
I think Turner wins the fight, but if you ask me who I think the money line side is, I think it's Renato Money Moicano. This guy Turner, he's great in the first round, super long, super rangy, but his weight cut's ridiculous, and he could possibly guess.
Jessica Andrade or Marina Rodriguez?
I'm going with Andrade in that one. More ways to win for me.
Rodriguez for me.
Jim Miller making the trifecta 100, 200, 300 or Bobby King Green?
I don't read enough books. I'm going Bobby King Green there. Off the KO, a little bit concerning, but I think he just has more ways, more tools.
I don't know if I'll ever pick against Bobby Green after the Grant Dawson fight, my man. Congrats.
Hey, you remember that? Both of us hit that Bobby Green money line. That was the best underdog of last year. Davison, Dice Tugea, Figueiredo, or Cody Garbrandt?
This one's tricky. I think I like the dog here. I think Cody can pull off the upset, but he has to fight the perfect fight.
Figueiredo for me.
Gentlemen, thank you all so much for taking the time to join me on this special UFC 300 edition of Half the Battle. You can follow my man, Art C. What's your Twitter handle? Mr. Electrocute?
Yeah, Mr. Electrocute on Twitter, X.
And fightingstats.com. And my boy, the Jewish Bettor at MMA Line Mover and part of the Parlay Madness podcast. So, gentlemen, thank you all so much. Best of luck this weekend. And enjoy the fights. Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got the BMF belt on the line. We got the BMF champ, Justin Gaethje. He's 25-4, taking on the former featherweight champ, Max Holloway, who's 25-7. And currently, they got it. Justin Gaethje minus 175. The comeback on Max Holloway is plus 150. And joining me to break down the BMF title bout is James Blissett, Lucrative MMA. James, welcome back to Half the Battle.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. It seems like we haven't spoken a while, but, you know, I'm always down to chat fights with you. So I appreciate you having me on, brother.
No, the pleasure's all mine.
Yes.
Let's get right down to business, man, because this is a serious, serious fight. People like to cry about the BMF belts and whatnot, but I love the BMF belt because you think about the history. Diaz and Masvidal, two OGs, now both retired. Gaethje and Poirier, two violence gods. And now Gaethje and Holloway. I mean, Max Holloway, like if he wins that BMF belt, like I'm going to shed a tear because these are the kind of fighters that are deserving of such accolades. And it kind of brings me back to this poster on my wall here when Holloway fought Poirier. And I said then, you know, I think Dustin was like a plus 180 dog. I said, I'd bet Dustin at plus 180 odds versus any man that can weigh 155 pounds, not named Khabib. And I said, if the odds were reversed, I'd probably take Max in that same spot. Now we got Max at plus 150. But the thing about it is Gaethje, people try to act like now Gaethje completely changed his style. I don't think that's true. I think he maybe polished a couple things up, but the bottom line is, you know what to be worried about. Disgusting leg kicks, big power up top. And that's about the extent of it. But you cannot undermine how powerful those weapons are, James.
Yeah, exactly, man. This is a great fight, like you said. You know, a lot of people are hearing, they're saying that Max is going to suffer the same fate as he did when he fought Poirier. But I don't think that's a good way of capping a fight, you know. I think that we need to look at it a little bit differently. Every matchup is completely different. And that matchup was like, what's that, about 5 years ago now, Dan? Maybe 4 years ago or something?
Pre-pandemic, 2019.
Yeah, these two have changed completely. You know, obviously, they've both been elite fighters even back then. But it's not the same type of fight. It's not the same era. It's a completely different era. Max Max is moving up a weight class again, but I think he's moved up a weight class better this time. To me, he looks more filled out already, isn't even in the octagon yet. I think he's put muscle on the right way. I think he's prepared for this move. I think he's had a longer time to prepare for this move. I think he's been thinking about preparing for this move for many years, you know, especially after losing to Volkanovski multiple times. I think right post that fight, he's like, all right, I think I'm going to move up from Nan. Whereas with the Dustin Poirier one, if I remember correctly, he didn't have a year to move up to that weight class. I'm pretty sure it was done a lot less than a year. So, you know, I think that that's going to benefit him here. And it's going to be a banger of a fight either way, you know. But we got one fighter as a pretty sizable underdog. And that's the fighter I've bet. You know, I'll say it off the bat. I bet on Max Holloway. I got him at plus 170. So plus 150 has come in a little bit now. And I think the line movement is correct. I think people are seeing what I'm seeing. And we can get into that. But I do think that Max Holloway is going to become the new BMF title winner this weekend.
Yeah, look, it's an incredible matchup. And I agree with you that Max, in terms of like him moving up to 55, I think that this time he's had the adequate amount of time. Last time was kind of, you know, like a last minute type thing. And last time was still a great fight. Like, let's not act like that Max Holloway versus Poirier 2 fight wasn't absolutely incredible. But let's also, I just don't want to underemphasize how debilitating the weapons of Gaethje are, because let's talk about that first Poirier and Gaethje fight, not the one with the head kick knockout, the first one where Poirier actually won the fight in the 4th round. We remember how Poirier won by knockout, but one thing that people don't often mention is Justin Gaethje's leg kicks were adding up to a point where he actually tore Dustin Poirier's quad in that fight by kicking him so much, which is ridiculous. We know Max is super heavy on his lead leg. I mean, that's what a lot of boxers are. And we know that leg kicks have been a path for other fighters in the past, Volkanovski, et cetera, et cetera. So the question is, obviously, in terms of price, I think your head's in the right place. The question is, in terms of a pure pick and the matchup itself, how worried are you about these leg kicks? And do you think there's a chance that Gaethje can be the first man not to just knock out Holloway, but to drop him? Because remember, the legendary BJ Penn, another Hawaiian warrior, the big thing used to be never been knocked down, never been knocked out until he finally got knocked down and knocked out. Where do you kind of view that in terms of Max Holloway?
I don't think it's going to be this weekend, man. I really like Max in this spot. Outright pick, money line side, value, whatever you want to call it. If we just pick him winners, I'm still going to pick Max Holloway. And, you know, I'll break it down technically and what I'm seeing. I think that Max Holloway has better cardio than Justin Gaethje. You know, I don't think it's a major discrepancy. Of course not. Justin Gaethje has elite cardio as well. But I think Max's cardio is better. You know, I've seen him push in the 5-round distance many, many times, more than Justin Gaethje. He also has a lot more experience going 5 rounds. This guy's been 5 rounds time and time again. You know, Ortega got into that, 4th round, end of 4th round. It was Volkanovski's gone 5 rounds with that guy 3 times now. You get something from going 5 rounds with potentially the pound for pound best fighter, right? Maybe before he got knocked out, he was considered as that. You know, you get I think you gain a lot of experience from that. That's 3 times he's gone 5 rounds. He's also gone 5 rounds on other occasions. Dustin Poirier, up at 155, he's gone 5 rounds. Justin Gaethje has been set to go 5 rounds a couple of times, and he's been finished in those fights late. You know, he's got caught in those fights. Eddie Alvarez caught him. Dustin Poirier caught him. Khabib choked him out, right? Doesn't mean anything, but again, Max Holloway has more experience in the 5-round distance. I think he has better cardio. I think his volume is higher. And, you know, the talks this week's going to be, is the Gaethje power going to offset Max's volume? Because that's what happened in his fight with Poirier. For the most part, it's a very even fight. Poirier, for the most part, kind of just won the fight against Max by doing a little bit more damage, rocking him a couple more times, having the heavier punches. But I think Dustin sounds maybe disrespectful to Gaethje, and I want it to come across like that. But I do think Dustin's a bit more of a dog than Gaethje. I think Dustin can push a little bit extra. And I think Max is on that same level as Dustin. I think Justin's a little bit below. So when it gets to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round, I just see Max making adjustments on the fly, which is another thing that I believe Max is better at than Justin Gaethje. I think he can make adjustments on the fly in fights better than Justin Gaethje. You know, he did it against Yair Rodriguez. He did it against Arnold Allen. And I've seen recently in his fights, he has stuck to a game plan better than I've seen him before. You know, in the Yair Rodriguez fight, he started to take him down. We've never seen that out of Max before. He was taking him down and mauling him on the ground at points. You know, so that's another wrinkle in Max's game that we could see in this fight. He might get a couple of trip takedowns in round 4 and round 5. He might use his veteran spirit, you know, because I think a lot of people will look at Justin saying he's the veteran in this spot. You know, I don't even know the age. What do you know the age, Dan? Like the exact age of them two?
Yeah. So
close.
Gaethje is only 3 years older. He was born in 88, so he's probably 34, 35, and Max was born in 91. So he's probably 30, 31, maybe 32 at most.
And I actually think Max is more of a veteran in this spot. I think MMA experience goes to Max 5-round. Like I said, I think Max is going to be the one to make adjustments on the fly. And I think he's got the grappling upside, even though it's minimal. Like I said, I don't think Justin has much off his back, you know, and I'm not expecting Max to go out and shoot takedowns, but can he grab a couple like he did in the Rodriguez fight to offset some of that damage, that pressure? Of course he can. I also think he's probably got a bit of a better chin, to be honest. I think his chin's a little bit better. I mean, I could go on and on, but that's about 6 different points where I think Max is better than Justin at MMA. And so I'm going to stick with my man Max. I think he gets the fight done. I think he wins inside the distance as well, which is, you know, is a big thing to say, I guess, because Gaethje's a tough guy. And I also think he can win by submission, you know, and he doesn't have a lot of submissions in the UFC. But I think Gaethje's going to be feeling it. Gaethje may shoot a reckless takedown. Max Holloway has some good front chokes. He's got long limbs. Justin gets finished in these 5-round fights. I can see Max getting a submission. The odds are kind of crazy for that right now. I don't know exactly what the odds for submission are, but I know they're a bit crazy, and I will be playing them as soon as I'm able to get some decent money down. Max Holloway submission only plus 1,000 on BetOnline at the moment. I know it was plus 2,900 when it came out on FanDuel at one point, but obviously everyone smashed that line. But I'll get better than plus 1,000 because BetOnline, you know, they're the first to release it, so I'm sure I'll get better than that. But that's my breakdown for the fight, man. I'm going with Max this weekend. The best is blessed. I think we're going to get the BMF champion changing hands this weekend.
One of the only points that I'll give you a little bit of pushback on, and not much, is the Yair Rodriguez fight. So a lot of those times when Yair was on his back, he'd actually like throw like a flying kick and then fall. And credit to Max. I mean, when Max capitalized, Max got his back, Max got full mount. And like you said, Max has some very dangerous long man chokes. I mean, I think back to that fight he had against Cub Swanson where he choked him out back in the day. And you know for a fact that Gaethje has been submitted. So kind of the way I see this fight going down is I really do think the early rounds are going to go to Gaethje. I just not sure what happens after that. Like, I really do think he's going to chop Max down with big leg kicks.
Yeah.
And he's going to hit him upstairs super hard. But Max has that kind of chin where like you break your hand hitting him with your hardest shot. He laughs at you. He starts to taunt you. I mean, the numbers he put up against Kattar, like, I know that people talk about that often, but I still think that it needs to be said every single time. To attempt close to 800 strikes and land like 450 of them, like, hey, that's the kind of volume that you just, you know, I've never heard of before. But I gotta give Gaethje a lot of credit. Like, he has been putting up really good numbers lately. And so you mentioned, like, you know, back in the day, like in that Eddie Alvarez fight, which by the way was a 3-round fight, but he did get finished late in that fight. To your credit, I do kind of think that in that Fiziev fight that he kind of was doing better in the later rounds a little bit. I felt like Fiziev started to slow down, and Gaethje, like I said, people try to act like he's completely changed his style, which isn't the case. I just think it's slightly more polished. It's like a more mature Justin Gaethje. That's literally, it's still Justin Gaethje. Make no mistake about it. Just a little bit more polished, a little bit more mature. That's why he was able to do as well in those deeper rounds against a guy like Fiziev. But man, you just put on that Charles Oliveira fight. If that's the only fight you're going to watch, then you think Max is automatically live. Like right out the gate, the way that Charles was just hurting Justin anytime he landed anything on him, like literally, like from the jump.
Yeah.
And then you see those same shots that Charles was eating from Gaethje, and you know Max is probably going to eat them like nothing. So it's just hard for me because I'm curious, like, even if Max doesn't get knocked out, which has never happened before, he's never been dropped. You saw deep into both the second and third Volkanovski fights, it seemed like Max actually was starting to wear the damage a little bit. Like in that second one, the one that people consider a robbery, that 4th and 5th round, it was actually Volk that was outlasting Max. And then in the third round, the third fight, he kind of left Max a bloody mess. So I'm just more concerned about that than I am about Max getting knocked out. Like, it's going to be a sad day when Max finally gets knocked out. Just like I said, it's going to be a sad day when Chito Vera finally gets knocked out. Like these guys that you hit them with a baseball bat and they smile at you and keep walking forward, like Chuck Liddell back in the day. And then eventually he started getting knocked out by everybody. So it's just sad when that happens. So I guess my big question is like, what's going to happen in, 3rd to 5th rounds, 3rd, 4th, and 5th? Like, that's like my big my big question, because I do think Max is going to be eating damage. The question is, can he kind of Diaz bro Gaethje a bit? Eat those leg kicks, no problem. You don't even check the kicks, you just eat them. You take a bunch of damage, the scar tissue is all added up, and then you come back with your own volume. He starts to fatigue from whooping your ass, and that's when you start to get off on your own volume. I can absolutely see a late Max Holloway finish like you're leaning towards. But I gotta be honest, man. I am worried about the damage he might take up front. Are you not?
Yeah. But it's a fight, man. And I trust Max to get through that damage. And that's really what it comes down to. I haven't seen him drop before. I've seen him wobbled on a minor occasion. If I'm betting on anyone to take damage against Justin Gaethje, Max is going to be like one of my number one choices. Literally, out of the entire roster in the weight classes, 155 now, if I could pick anyone to take damage from Justin Gaethje, Max might even be number one. So, while I'm worried, I think Max is the person to do it. And I also think that the damage is going to significantly drop after a couple of rounds, because I do think Max, like I said, has the ability to adjust on the fly better than Justin Gaethje. That's my opinion. People are going to disagree with that based on the round 3 jab clinic he put on Fiziev and things like that. But I just believe that Max has the ability to technically win on the fly in the fight. And I do think we'll see that play out from the 3rd round onwards. And I also think that he will never slow down, whereas I do think Justin will slow down a little bit. And I also think that the ability that Max has to string combinations together is just going to offset Gaethje after the 3rd round, man. And Gaethje ain't going to be able to plant his feet. Gaethje ain't going to be able to land the same amount of strikes or the same damaging strikes that he is early in the fight. So yeah, I think Max is the person to do it. The thing I'm worried about the most is not so much the damage to the head, but I think that the leg kicks could cause issues. Like I definitely want to mention that, because I'm making the case for Max right now, but obviously I can make the case for Gaethje as well, right? Both fighters are good. Both fighters have outs to win, but I'm making the case for Max. He's an underdog. He's who I'm picking out, right? I want to be bullish on him. I want to give a good prediction to the viewers, but I do want to mention the leg kicks specifically. I won't mention anything else, but the leg kicks are something I'm worried about. I do think Max is going to take some fucking horrible leg kicks in this fight, but I think he's going to come through, like I said.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like I said at the beginning of this breakdown, I do think it's a dog or pass situation. As a pure pick, I'm leaning a little bit towards Gaethje. UFC 300, like just take away stylistics and all that stuff. Dude, some crazy shit is going to happen at this card. Like you just know that, I know that, everybody knows that. And like, it just makes sense to see a guy like Max Holloway with a BMF belt. Like he is a BMF win, lose or draw. Like that's just what he is. So it makes sense. It makes sense. Like you gave a great argument for Max. So before you get out of here, James, can I get a quick pick for every fight on this card?
Yeah, of course.
Jamahal or Poatan?
Jamahal.
My man. Yan Xiaonan or Zhang Weili?
Weili.
Boo. You already told me you got Holloway. Charles Dubronx or Arman Tsarukyan?
Tsarukyan.
Bo Nickal or Cody Brundage?
Now the lines are popping into my head. I'm thinking, where's the value at? All right. Pure pick, Bo Nickal.
Are you risking 25 units to win one on Bo Nickal?
No.
So it's not just about picking winners then, huh?
No.
So Jiri Prochazka or Aleksandar Rakic?
Rakic.
Calvin Kattar or Aljo Sterling?
Sterling.
Holly Holm or Kayla Harrison?
Kayla.
Sodiq Yusuff or Diego Lopez?
My boy, Diego Lopez. I'll go with him one more time. Sodiq ain't got that chin.
It hurts my feelings. Jalen Turner or Renato Moicano?
Closer than people think. Jalen Turner.
Jessica Andrade or Marina Rodriguez?
Jessica.
Bobby Green or Jim Miller?
I think it's fate. Jim Miller.
Let me ask you something. I've been asking a few of my guests this. Do you think there's a man on planet Earth that has an open parlay with Jim Miller at UFC 100, Jim Miller at UFC 200, and now Jim Miller at UFC 300? Does this man exist?
I don't think he exists, but I do think there's people out there who would bet on Jim Miller and then bet on him at 200 and are now going to bet on him at 300 and cash all three.
And it's funny because I was talking about it. Like he won at 100 via decision. He won at 200 via TKO. He's just got to win here by sub, which is very hard to submit Bobby Green. Hasn't been done in a long time, but he does that. That's the ultimate trifecta right there, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, man. I think it's fate. I think Jim Miller's getting the win this weekend, man. You don't even need an analysis, bro. It's just like it's written in the stars.
Jim fucking Miller. If Bruce Buffer says that, everyone's gonna go crazy. Last but not least, Davison, Dice Dugea, Figueredo, or Cody Garbrandt.
I think you have to go with Figgy.
James, I appreciate your time. Best of luck on the BMF bet, and best of luck with everything, man. Go kill it on Parlay Madness with the Jewish bettor. I got him for my co-main event breakdown, so I'm happy to see it, and hope y'all keep kicking ass, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Dan. You're an OG of the game. You know, always have a lot of respect for you. So hopefully we can do a stream soon. And maybe you can come on my stream for UFC 300 if you're free this week. But I'll hit you up on the DMs for that, man. Regardless, we'll do something soon.
Awesome. Appreciate you, James. And we'll speak soon, buddy.
Thank you, bro.
Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between the former champion, Charles do Bronx Oliveira. He's 34-9, and he's taking on Arman Tsarukyan, who's 21-3. And currently, they got it Arman Tsarukyan minus 225. The comeback on Charles do Bronx Oliveira is plus 190. And joining me to break down this pivotal lightweight matchup is first-time guest of the show, Gianni the Greek Corrales. Gianni, welcome to Half the Battle.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Thank you. I've been a fan, for a long time. Me and you have gone back and forth through DMs. And obviously, I follow you, watch your show, support all the great stuff you do. So it's a pleasure it's being on, and especially for such a big card. Hopefully, we share some value with the viewers.
No, the pleasure's all mine, Gianni. I mean, you, Nick, and James had me on the Gambler's Perspective, so I knew I had to return the favor, and what better card than UFC 300. And let's get right down to business, my man, because this matchup right here in the lightweight division has to be a number one contenders fight. Whoever wins this fight is going to face Islam Makhachev, and the stakes couldn't be higher, Gianni. And what I love about this, what's interesting, and I talk about this often, right? Like when you mentioned the Charles do Bronx versus Islam Makhachev fight, and I historically said, listen, you're getting a massive discount on Islam Makhachev. Gianni, he was minus 160. He was minus 165. In every other fight, you have to lay minus 500. You have to lay minus 750. You have to lay minus 1,000. And what's interesting about that is I think Arman Tsarukyan has a very comparable style to Islam Makhachev. Let me explain what I mean. When you saw Dustin Poirier drop Charles Oliveira, when you saw Justin Gaethje drop Charles Oliveira, what happened? None of them wanted to follow Charles Oliveira into his guard. He's so dangerous. They all told him, get back up, gives him the time to recover, and you don't want to give do Bronx an opportunity to recover. Whereas a guy like Islam, he dropped Charles. He followed him right to the mat, passed his guard, and submitted him. I truly believe, Gianni, and I want your opinion on this, if Arman Tsarukyan drops Charles Oliveira, which Charles Oliveira gets dropped in a lot of fights, I believe he will have zero hesitation following him to the mat. What's your opinion?
None at all. None at all. That's what he wants to do. He controls his opponents for almost 40% of the minutes that he's grappling with them. And he's not going for subs. He's there to get on top, stay heavy, and just drop bombs. And he's going to keep attempting that takedown until he gets it. That's his game. I mean, even though I think his stand-up is getting more and more dangerous, and to get to that level in the UFC, you have to be well-rounded. You can't just have one skill set. Even as advanced as it may be, eventually these guys are just good enough now. If they're well-rounded, someone's going to give you a problem in the top 5. But this kid, with his stand-up getting better and better, he's not going to abandon his ground game just because it's Oliveira, just because Oliveira has that history of being so dangerous, of being able to submit guys, of winning fights that way, having that submission ratio of 40-10, a 4-1 submission ratio. I don't think he's going to be scared. I agree with you 100%, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think Tsarukyan's going to get on top. I think he's going to stay heavy, and I think he's going to win rounds for us.
I would assume that a lot of people's arguments are, well, Islam was minus 160, minus 165, and he's the champ. So if he was that price, why would I lay minus 225 on Arman? And I think that's a legit question. But Gianni, you could make an argument there's a discount on both.
And here's why. That minus 165 price was wrong. In fact, it was so inefficient that I placed some of the biggest bets that I've made in a very long time on Islam Makhachev, where I even have gone above my spread, where I bet 1x to 5x, and I doubled up on Makhachev because I believed in heart of hearts, like Billy Walters did when the Saints were in the Super Bowl, that the line was that off. He made his biggest bet. I had that same amount of confidence where if he lost, I would have slept comfortably. As long as I know I placed a good bet, I sleep well. I know I'm going to lose a lot of good bets. That's just the randomness of an independent bet. Right now, I'm in Vegas. Someone's winning a terrible bet. Right now on the roulette table, someone just hit a number, and that's the worst bet you could possibly make. They're getting paid 35 to 1, and they're extremely happy, and they're celebrating, and they should. But the true odds are at least 38 to 1. So we know, just the math tells us it's a terrible bet. But if I know that the roulette table is giving me 40 to 1, 45 to 1, even if I don't hit the number, I walk away a very happy man. And that's how I felt with Makhachev. I think now it's just the market has caught up with Tsarukyan, but having it beat Oliveira, I think you're actually getting him discounted because Oliveira having that recency bias, having beaten Dariush. If he was coming in off this fight, off that loss, I think this line would be closer to that minus 300 range where guys like myself think this should be. Why I jumped on the 225. I usually wouldn't. I'm extremely confident that the ticket ratio is going to be 6, 7, 8, 10 to 1 in favor of Charles Oliveira when they both walk to the octagon that night. And I think the sports books are going to need my side, the Tsarukyan side, because most bettors want to put up a little money to win a lot, not a lot of money to win a little. So they don't want to lay 2.5 to 1 against someone like Oliveira, who's so dangerous. And again, I know that Tsarukyan is going to be in danger. And it's just, when you fight that elite level competition in the UFC, that's just how it goes. But I still think the price is off. I think he wins this fight 3 out of 4 times, if not 4 out of 5 times. Trajectory of careers are very different where they are, 7 years younger. And also, he's been thrown into the deep end. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Charles has the bigger sample size because he's got 32 UFC fights compared to only 10 for Tsarukyan. So his opponents have a bigger sample size of fights, but their win percentage is 70%. The exact win percentage of Tsarukyan's opponents. They just have less fights, but they have won just as many fights. And the only difference is Tsarukyan's lost the better competition, meaning 80% win rate. But again, smaller sample size. So we'll see when the sample size grows what the data tells us. No statistical significance there, but I find comfort in knowing he hasn't been beating easy guys to get here. He deserves to have this fight. And last thing, I don't want to go long. I know I've already had, but I've made money on Makhachev. He is my guy. Anyone who watches UFC on the line knows he is my guy. But against Tsarukyan is the only time when they meet that I will not confidently bet Makhachev. I don't know if I'll sit on the sidelines and just pass, but I think if Tsarukyan is that guy that will give him a fight, and the betting line is going to determine whether I get involved or not, obviously. But I do think the rematch is warranted once he gets past Oliveira on Saturday night.
I mean, Gianni, I don't think it's just a matter of opinion. I've seen Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan fight before, and it was a very competitive fight. And that was Arman Tsarukyan's UFC debut. Imagine you get the call. You've been training your whole life for this opportunity to fight in the UFC, and you don't just get, your opportunity to make your debut. You have to fight Islam Makhachev in that first ever appearance. And I mean, this kid is the definition of sink or swim. He's been thrown to the deep end from the very beginning, and boy, has he been swimming. And Gianni, he's only 26, 27. He's just a kid. You're used to guys mid-30s. Those are the guys that are touching belts, and this guy is a young stud on a title trajectory. So I guess my big question is, and I think you kind of answered it, what do you think the true odds are in this matchup before the fact?
I think that at minus 300, I would have had to take a harder look and see if there's some EV for me there on the favorite, because at that point, I think I would have been betting my opinion and not really betting the inefficient price, where at 225, I am very confident that he wins this fight at least 3 out of 4 times, where it should be a minus 300. And if I'm afraid I'm biased. If I didn't have that bias in me because of the age differential, then maybe I wouldn't get to that 4 out of 5 where it's minus 400. That's why I placed the big bet, but I haven't gone crazy. But I will say this, if it drops to minus 200, and I've already seen 220 at Circa, if it gets to minus 200, I will get to the window again, because at the very least, I do think it's 3 out of 4 times a minus 300 implied win probability. So at minus 200, that's 67%, a little less than that. I got an 8% margin. I'm firing. I'm unloading. I'm going to the window double-fisted. Win or lose, I placed a great bet. I did my job. So being a pay-per-view card, you're going to have to understand sometimes, even if you're sharp, even if you're on the sharp side, even if you usually get respect, that the market may not move your way because the public money will outweigh sharp money in some of these fights. It's just like in the NFL on Sunday, rest assured, there's sharp money, but there's just so much public money, it outweighs it. So a lot of times the line move doesn't reflect the actual sharp side. So don't let it drop and scare you and think all of a sudden they're steaming Oliveira, because I'm already seeing the public's taking Oliveira. And I think as we get closer to fight night, because no one's tying their money up Monday or Tuesday when it's Saturday's coming along, they will be betting Oliveira. So we just may get a -200 if you agree with me out there. If not, sit back, or get down now if you disagree with me.
I mean, that would be an insane closing line, because you look at Arman's history, right? Against Beneil, closes -325. Against Joaquim Silva, closes -1600. -250 against Demir. -285 against Gamrot. -350 against Joel Alvarez. -1000 against Christos Giagos. -715 against Matt Frivola. You got to go all the way back to when he fought Olivier Aubin-Mercier, that he was under -200 at the close. Do you predict, with all this public action, that we will get a -200 on fight day on Arman Tsarukyan?
I think there's a chance, because I know guys that get respect in the market that already bet the -225 like I did. I sent that out to my guys immediately. Usually when I know the public's going to be on the other side and they're going to influence the market, I'll sit back and wait and try to get a better number. But when I'm extremely confident that the data I'm looking at reflects exactly what other guys that do this for a living, that bet actual numbers and aren't betting opinions, that grind out EV long term, I think they're going to see the same thing. And that's what I found out talking to Nick. If Nick knows where most of the sharp betting syndicates are on, and he exactly words were, yeah, so far it's been, they like the favorite as well. So I think a lot already got down, and I would not be surprised if we get this to a -200. And finally, I think this will be one of those fights, Dan, that when it's all said and done and the dust settles, we're going to look back and say, wow, Arman should have been closer to that 350 range. He probably is a 4-1 favorite against Charles when we factor in Charles is a few months shy of 35 years old in a weight class where you don't have many 38-year-old guys that are really doing damage. You know what I mean? Sure, there's that diamond in the rough, that outlier, but historically in that weight class, you're not getting it done at 36, 37, 38 years old. It's that 27 to 32 range that you're doing the most damage and fighting top 5 guys.
Yeah, and I just want the fans to know that I know we both have Arman here. We're both betting him here, but that is no disrespect or discredit to Charles do Bronx Oliveira. Like, this guy is a future Hall of Famer, a former champion, most finishes in the history of the sport. He's going to go on to break many records, and I think that Charles do Bronx deserves his flowers 100%. It's tough because when you're betting on these fights, you got to put the fan cap aside, and you got to say, look, it's not personal. It's just business. It is what it is, Gianni. I love Charles do Bronx as much as the next guy, but I really, truly feel I'm getting a discount on Arman here.
do Bronx won 12 of the last 13 fights, with the only loss in that time coming to Islam Makhachev, where he lost by arm triangle in the second round. That's it. Other than that, like, they could have fought that 6 hours later, and who knows, maybe he doesn't get caught and he's on a 14, 15 fight win streak, but he's not. He's still on a 12-1 win streak, did I say? So if this guy actually does catch Arman in a sub, will I be shocked? Will I wake up Sunday morning thinking like, wow, he defied probability? That was crazy what Charles did? Absolutely not. No one's gotten rich fading Charles over the last couple of years. He's done nothing but print money. I don't know anyone walking around that's saying hey, I'm rich by betting against Oliveira. So again, it's almost MMA blasphemy. But this isn't a fade on Oliveira. This is a bet on Tsarukyan. I'm making that extremely clear. I am not fading Charles Oliveira. I am betting on Arman Tsarukyan, who I think the market just hasn't realized how good this kid is based on his losses. That's it. But like we said with the strength of schedule, you got to give a young guy a pass, because in the UFC, you're not going 30-0 like boxing. You're not going 33-0 before we see you on pay-per-view. It just doesn't work that way. The top guys have losses. And when you don't, we idolize you like you're Khabib. You're a god in the sport. So having losses is just part of the game. But the bettors, it's just we're biased. We're short-term memory, a lot of recency bias to it. And I think that's what is allowing us to get such a good price on Tsarukyan. But I will not fault anyone that has an Oliveira ticket. And just like I wouldn't be surprised if he gets the win, I just don't think it's a great bet.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Charles can finish anyone via knockout, via submission. You already know the deal. But I love the distinction you made, Gianni. It's not a fade on Bronx. It's a bet on Arman Tsarukyan. And that's the point I want to make here. Again, no disrespect to Charles Bronx. We love him. I think he's a future Hall of Famer. And I wouldn't be surprised if he got to finish this week. But at this price, I'm on Arman as well.
Yep.
And Gianni, before I get you out of here, man, are you down to do a quick pick on every fight? I'll mention the matchup. You just give a pick, no analysis.
Yeah. Just all I need 30 seconds because I'm a line guy. Like I bet a lot market wise. So I like even without the data, that's perfect. All I got to do is pull up my up the latest betting lines, and I'm ready to go, buddy. Yeah, absolutely. I love it.
Awesome.
And for me, I'm not picking the winner of the fight. This is against the line. This is with the number who I think the value's on.
Absolutely. So Pereira versus Jamahal Hill.
Give me Hill as the dog.
Zhang Weili versus Xiaonan.
Give me Yan. If it stays standing, she's going to give her problems. If it goes to a decision, you're holding your breath, weighing 400.
It's music to my ears. You're looking at the guy that's bet Xiaonan in every single UFC fight she's had. So why would I stop at the best price she's ever been in her title fight when I've literally bet her every single fight?
She's done nothing but reward you for that too.
Yeah, and same with Jamahal. So music to my ears. Nickal, Cody, Brundage.
Yeah, I like Nickal, and I wouldn't even argue with guys that are looking for a 5% return on investment within 15 minutes by betting them, because I don't think this gets out of the first round. If it does, it'll probably get interesting. But if you look at Brundage's last win, it was that kid that was on the Contender Series, and no disrespect, but if you look at the opponent he bet on the Contender Series, look at the strength of schedule of that kid, and you'll see there's levels to this game, as the Daniel Cormier said, and Nickal's just levels ahead. I can't fault you if you sprinkle on Brundage, but I think it's a waste of money. You could do a lot better with that money. There's charities that need it.
Gianni, it's funny because I've been asking every single guest. So are you not laying 25 to win one? Because I thought it's all about picking winners, Gianni.
At 2,000, I could see the argument of finding a little bit of VV if he's 99% probability. But I just think the Black Swan event, you got to give about close to a 5%. What if he wakes up with a headache? What if he gets a call from his girlfriend and he gets pissed an hour before? Anything, just Black Swan. So I factor that in. That's why I don't think there's enough room to make the bet, but I don't think there's any reason to jump on Brundage for sure.
Jiri, Prochazka, or Rakic?
I like Rakic a lot. I think this line should be a lot higher. I think Jiri's just one of those guys. No knock on him, but he's just going to be overvalued in the betting market. He looks the part. He has that persona that he gets money at the window, so you're not going to get him at a discount. Give me Rakic.
Sterling or Kattar?
Kattar's a tough out for Sterling up at that weight class. But I think if he gets it done, he's talking top 5 and put me in title contention immediately. And we've seen him be able to take down guys that you think he could take them down. And I think eventually he will do that and show his dominance. Give me Sterling as the favorite.
Holm or Harrison?
Age tells me to take Harrison, and that she's just going to be so much bigger than Holly. And that's her game. If she implements that and she has the advantage, she should be able to do it. But I don't think the price is right. I don't think it's there yet. And Holly's shown us, unlike Brundage, that she can play spoiler at any time. She has the skill set, the tool belt to beat anybody, any female in that weight class on any given night. It's just has her speed deteriorated, and the physicality, which she leaned on a lot throughout her career, is Harrison's physicality just too much? I think so. Opinion on the bet, Harrison wins. Betting it, I think you sprinkle Holmes or leave it alone.
So on the topic of recency bias, what do you think about Diego Lopez versus Sodiq Yusuff?
A ton of it. I like Yusuff. I'm hoping more Lopez money comes in so I could take an even bigger position on Yusuff. I think he's one of those guys that is extremely overvalued and is just so capable. It just hasn't transpired on the field. It's like you look at the data of a team, and you're like, dude, this team should win this many games, but for some reason they just don't get it done. But he's coming off a great fight of the night against Barboza. He lost because of the takedowns, but he outlanded him in significant strikes. He's won 2 of his last 3, even over his last 4. He's 2-2. He's only got 2 losses. So as a dog, give me plus money with him. It's profitable. I'm a fan of Youssef. I like that side.
Jalen Turner or Moicano?
Turner. I think he's got a chip on his shoulder. And Moicano, because of his out of the cage persona, he usually attracts money also. And just that name recognition usually ain't going to get a price. That's why I like Turner there.
Andrade or Marina Rodriguez?
Oh, that one's a tough fight. I'd have to go Rodriguez. I faded Andrade a lot because more times than not, I think she's been overvalued and she's been in bad spots, like taking short notice fights, just taking a bad fight after a fight. And you've just found spots to bet against her instead of spots to bet on her. I don't think this is a spot to bet on her.
Jim Miller or Bobby Green?
I like Bobby Green a lot, and you actually tipped me to the fact this fight was made a long time ago, and the price was so different. I think they're very different fighters from then. Like, it's not like comparing it that it was 6 months ago or 2 months ago and it just got canceled because of weight or some guy had the flu. But you bringing that up and that you just had that off the top of your head before I really dug in made me immediately back off and say, I'm a guy that really looks for line value. And if I compare the line values, it's hard to argue, even though it's a different fight. They're different fighters. There's a different time in careers as well. They're still closed at that number. It's still close at that number. So I like Green, but it's probably a pass.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember in 2014, so Bobby Green had just cashed as a plus 250 dog against Josh Thompson. He gets the Miller fight. He's a dog again. I'm like, oh, I love this. He ends up having to pull out the fight. Jim Miller beats Yancy Medeiros. Then they're scheduled to fight again in the pandemic. That falls through. Third time is the charm at UFC 300. 2 legends. Can't wait. And last but not least, Gianni. Davison Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt to kick off the card. What are you thinking?
This is why I try not to watch preview shows, interviews, press conferences, because if you get to know some of these guys or like a fighter, it's so hard to be unbiased. And Cody Garbrandt happens to be a fighter that I've ran into a number of times at the UFC Apex. And I can tell you is one of the absolute most genuine human beings you will ever meet. One of the nicest gentlemen you will ever meet. It's so hard for me to root against this guy. And then seeing him at that price as a dog and knowing the kid's got the skill set. Obviously, he's had that bad run and he's fighting some demons for sure. But he's now won his last 2. He's won 3 of his last 5. And that tough skid, it was against TJ Dillashaw. I mean, he wasn't losing against nobody, and they were title fights. They were 5-round title fights. Again, he got knocked out. The chin was a question, but that kid will stand and bang with anybody. And for biased reasons, I'm not rooting against Cody. In fact, I'm sprinkling something on Cody Garbrandt, and I'm going to cheer my boy in.
I mean, the price, it's dog or pass as far as I'm concerned. So, Gianni, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me right here, right now on Half the Battle. The fans can follow you at Greek Gambler. Gianni, any message for the fans before I get you out of here?
No, thank you for all your support, whether you fade, follow, or ignore. I just love all the engagement from the MMA community. Again, we bet the stuff, so everyone's going to have an opinion. One day you're going to agree, one day you're going to disagree. But I love that everybody's like respectful, and most realize we're all on this side of the counter. And I love how they interact and share information amongst each other. Even some information that you would think you'd hold proprietary, this community shares it. So I love it. And I'm just grateful that many have accepted me in it. So thank you. And thank you for having me.
Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got a matchup between the all-star prospect, Bo Nickal. He's 5-0, taking on Cody Brundage, who's 10-5. But between you and me, he's 9-6 because he definitely lost to Jacob Malkoun. And joining me to break down Bo Nickal versus Cody Brundage is the host of the Die Hard MMA podcast. I'm talking about Mr. Clint Maclean himself. Clint, welcome back to Half the Battle.
Dan, my man, Ball Gang, what's up? Thank you very much for having me on this historic event. I'm excited, man.
And the pleasure's all mine. And I know you took issue with what I just said about Cody Brundage's record. Reason being is you're one of the few that cashed on Cody Brundage winning by first round finish. Not only his last fight against Zach Reese, but the one that we're talking about against Jacob Malkoun. But let me set the table real quick. Currently, they got it Bo Nickal minus 2,500. You got to lay 2.5K to win 100, Clint. The comeback on Cody Brundage is plus 1,100. So here's what I got to ask you, man, because people seem to tell me it's all about picking winners and it's not about value. It's about picking winners. Okay, fair enough. So if that's the case, are you about to lay 25 units to win one on Bo Nickal here?
Dan, they call that bridge jumping. They call those bridge jumper prices. And you know, every single time if I go to the Cody Safdie well and I make myself a big PRP parlay where it's got 12 legs in it, the one that's minus 1,200 is always the one that freaking loses, man. Like, that's the one that blows the whole thing. Not the minus 160, not the plus 125 I squeezed in there. It's the big-ass favorite that I can't see any possible way that they lose. That's the one that ruins my day. Never fails. And all you guys that are trying to sell lies and are trying to bring down the name of Cody Brundage, I'm not here for it. I ain't gonna hear it. My man's 2-0 in his last 2 fights, and the record stands. I got facts on my side.
So the big question is, are you going to the well a third time in a row?
How could you not? Of course. I absolutely am going to the well a third time in a row, Dan. He was plus 2,020 to 1. Round 1 KO, TKO, or DQ against Jacob Malkoun. And in fact, if you go back and listen to my breakdown, I specifically included the DQ. I said, if he's not winning this fight, he may look for the door. Quote. And I cashed a 20 to 1 ticket on that prop. Went right back to it against Zach Reese. And I think it was 11 or 12 to 1 because, let's be honest, he had a real puncher's chance in that fight, right? That was a much more appropriately matched fight for Cody Brundage, and he did the damn thing again. So I am back-to-back over 10 to 1 winners with this exact play, and they're giving me 55 to 1. Guys, you can't get it on FanDuel because they don't include the DQ. You must have the DQ. Now, Dan, between you and I, they're not giving Bo Nickal a disqualification for soft elbows to the back of the head. In fact, they'll probably let him get away with 5 of those just to make sure he doesn't have his record besmirched in this spot. But I'm just saying, you got to have it as an insurance policy. In my opinion, the round 1 KO, TKO, or DQ for Cody is essentially his money line. And at 55 to 1, back-to-back winners, I'm running it back at the biggest price they've ever offered me on it. I hope Cody comes out and flying knees this man in the face.
You know, I'm not going to talk you off it, not only because of the price, but let me ask you this. The only thing is, you know, you're talking between money line and the prop. But I mean, when you told me the number on the prop, it's like, why even give him a rebuttal? But I guess my only rebuttal, Clint, is Bo Nickal's never been past round 1. What does Bo Nickal look like past round 1? That's what I want to know.
I want to know that too, Dan. The only problem is they gave him a guy where that's not going to be a problem. Even if Cody defends everything that Bo Nickal does and survives and sees the bell in round 2, he doesn't have it. He won't have any way to threaten Bo in the second round. So I simply don't see it. Now, I mean, you can go back on the regional scene record here for my guy, Cody Brundage. And there's been a couple of guys that he's got by decision. There's been a couple of guys he's gotten round 2 or round 3. None of them are overly impressive. None of them have good records. And Bo is just the wrestling on this guy. Like, I know wrestlers tend to be the guys that we question, right? Isaac Dilgarian. You know, they talked about how great his gas
Walter Walker.
Walter Walker. Well, I'll compare Isaac Dilgarian more than Walter, but my boy C-Rod is known for those deep waters. He's known for being able to defend that, dig deep, and push where the other guy can't. Got to tell you, I don't think that's the reputation that Cody Brundage has. So, Hail Mary guillotine, man. If it gets to round 2, Cody, you jump every single guillotine you get a chance for because that's the only option. But I think he needs to win this one early if he's going to win it at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the odds indicate here. I'm actually very curious what the over-under is. in this fight. About to take a look real quick. So currently, check this out. Some books even have an over and under half a round, Clint. And under half a round is plus 180. Like plus 180 for under half a round. And okay, under 1.5 rounds, minus 270, minus 300 in some spots. Under 2.5 rounds, minus 750. So, I mean, if you think that two wrestlers are just going to kind of, hump each other against the fence and kill clock, there might be something here with this over. But just based on how they fight, I don't think so either, Clint. If for some reason it does go past the first round, man, the bad look with Brundage is that Dumas fight. When you saw kind of a greener guy like Dumas, who I think Dumas has a bright future. I just think Dumas is very green at the moment. He's still kind of figuring things out. He's still developing. He was able to grind out Cody Brundage. Now, look, Cody Brundage is not a bad fighter. I mean, when he wins fights, it's you for the most part. I'm not talking about the Maclean fight, okay, Clint? But for the most part, when he wins, it's usually emphatic. I mean, that Tresean knockout, that slam against Zach Reese. I mean, everybody that was talking bad about Cody Brundage immediately apologized when he slammed Zach Reese unconscious. So, like, Cody Brundage, win or lose, for the most part, his fights deliver. And Bo Nickal is the top prospect. I heard John Anik even comparing him to a Chimaev. This is why this fight is on the main card, because a lot of people were crying about it. I think it's great. Like, I really don't think that these guys are going to make the crowd boo. And oftentimes when you get two wrestlers, you see them stand and bang until one man falls. My man Clint over here has got the Cody Brundage round 1 KO, TKO, or DQ. So I know he hopes someone falls, and let's see what happens. Obviously, my pure pick is Bo Nickal, but no, I am not laying 25 units to win one. So I'm going to be rooting for my boy Clint. Let's see what happens.
I appreciate it, Dan. I want to watch the world burn. Let's go, Cody Brundage.
Appreciate you joining me. All the fans, y'all know where to find him at his new home, the home of fight. And y'all can find the Die Hard MMA podcast there. And Clint, an absolute pleasure. And real quick, for all my guests, let's just get a quick pick on each fight. Don't give me any analysis. Just tell me. I'm going to say the two fighters. You tell me the pick. Alex Pereira or Jamahal Hill?
Jamahal Hill, baby. Let's go.
Why Zhang Weili or Xiaonan?
Got to go with Zhang. I'm sorry, Zhang.
Zhang Weili.
Weili, yeah, Zhang Weili. My bad.
No, it's cool. People like crucified me the last time I pronounced her name, so I'm making sure not to mess it up this time.
I get that.
Yeah. Justin Gaethje or Max Holloway?
Max Holloway? Spicy?
I like it. Charles Oliveira, Arman Tsarukyan.
Arman Tsarukyan.
Bo Nickal, Cody Brundage.
Cody Brundage. Let's know Bo Nickal.
Jiri Prochazka, Aleksandar Rakic.
Jiri.
Aljamain Sterling, Calvin Kattar.
Calvin Kattar.
I like that. From your lips to God's ears, Clint.
Let's go.
Kayla Harrison, Holly Holm.
Oh, Kayla? I don't like it, though.
Diego Lopez, Sodiq Yusuff.
Lopez.
Jalen Turner, Renato Moicano.
Jalen Turner.
Jessica Andrade, Marina Rodriguez.
Jessica Andrade, damn.
Ooh. Jim Miller, Bobby Green.
Bobby Green.
So you don't think Jim Miller will win at 100, 200, and not 300?
I hate to say it, but there are no fairy tale endings in mixed martial arts, Dan.
Let me ask you something before we move on to the last fight. Is there a guy, and I want to know, is there a guy that has an open parlay with Jim Miller at 100, Jim Miller at 200, and now he's got Jim Miller at 300, and it's the Jim Miller times 3 parlay? If someone has that open parlay, please get back to us as soon as possible. I would like to interview you personally. Clint, Davison Figueiredo or Cody Garbrandt?
Dan, that guy belongs at a mental institution, because if you only put Jim Miller in a parlay and you saved it for this many years, you belong in a mental institution, not on a podcast. Davison Figueiredo for the last fight.
Clint, I mean, if that guy can predict that Jim was going to be on all those, I wonder what else he can predict. Can he predict the economy,
fair,
world affairs, the upcoming election? I need these answers.
Powerball numbers, baby.
Powerball. So please reach out to us and let us know. Clint, it's always a pleasure, my man. And I look forward to speaking with you soon. And best of luck this week. I hope you kill it.
Yes, sir. Right back at you. Good luck, everybody. Cash some tickets.
Now, guys, I just got to give a huge shout out to today's sponsor, Betting Hero. An action-packed fight card is taking over Las Vegas for UFC 300, and DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the UFC, is giving new customers a shot to turn $5 into $150 instantly in bonus bets with any UFC 300 bet. Right now, looking at DraftKings, they got that plus 370 on Xiaonan. Arman Tsarukyan's only minus 225. Sodiq Yusuf's plus 120. There's lots of options in DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code HALFTHEBATTLE. New customers can bet $5 to get $150 instantly in bonus bets only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code HALFTHEBATTLE. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for gambling problem. Call 888-78-97777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.co/MMA for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Shout out to Betting Hero, and I hope they can help you find an awesome deal with DraftKings Sportsbook today. Make sure y'all click the link in the description below. Next up in the light heavyweight division, we got a matchup between the former champion, Jiri Prochazka. He's 29-4-1, taking on Aleksandar Rakic, who's 14-3. And currently, they got it. Aleksandar Rakic, minus 125. The comeback on Jiri Prochazka is plus 105. And joining me to break down this pivotal light heavyweight matchup is Adam Newsome, the owner of MMA Play 365. Adam, welcome back to Half the Battle.
No, I appreciate it, Dan. Thank you for the call up. And although I was a little disappointed I didn't make your main card, but I really like this fight. I think it's got a real, some real good talking points. So although I'm not on that main card, you've not given me Bo Nickal and and Cody Brundage, and I don't know who's on the Bo Nickal and Cody Brundage fight. So there's no offense there, just having a little bit of fun. But yeah, I love this fight, and again, thank you for having me on.
No, I mean, listen, Clint got the Bo Nickal fight because he, like the last two Brundage fights in a row, he's bet Brundage round one. So he cashed against Maclean, he cashed against Zach Reese, and now he's going to the well a third time. I had to get him on for that. And for you actually used to work with Rakic back in the day. So I thought, hey, no one knows Rakic better than my man Newsome. And this is such a good matchup because, these two don't like each other. I mean, you've heard the interviews with Rakic talking about how, Jiri's going to do his samurai bullshit and this and that. And I know for a fact when Jiri hears that, he doesn't like that either. So what do you kind of think about this matchup? Because we haven't seen Rakic since 2022 coming off a serious injury, and he's not getting a warm-up, a tune-up fight. He's fighting the former champion at UFC 300, Adam.
Yeah, so like you've just mentioned it there. For a start, this is an amazing fight, like stylistically, explosivity, all that good stuff. I know Rakic is not as explosive as what he came into the UFC being as explosive, if that makes sense. But man, there's a big difference between, fighting your Justin Ledettes to then even like, your Anthony Smiths. People say, okay, yeah, it wasn't that exciting of a fight, but Smith's still a veteran of the game. And, Smith is, still, I wouldn't say the top of the division, but he's a legit fighter, and Rakic did what he needed to do. But the whole injury and the blown MCL, I believe it was, is a really good talking point, because one of the things that I first thought of is, look, Rakic has always had that powerful low kick, deading dudes with the kicks, really destroying that lead leg. He tried to do it against Jan, but Jan Blachowicz was checking the kicks really well. So one of my main sort of concerns for Rakic was, excuse me, one of my main concerns for Rakic was, is he going to be, in the right headspace to be throwing that kick because of what happened to his knee afterwards? But actually, when you go back and watch how he did it on a backward step. It's not as if, he wrapped a hard low kick around, Jan's leg and then buckled his knee and torn his MCL because of that. So it's not as if that's going to be in the back of his head. Okay, can I kick this guy? Is the same thing going to happen last time? it was on a move. It was moving backwards, and he obviously just blew it in, one of, the weird and strange circumstances that, we see in MMA. There's always something crazy that seems to happen every single week. But yeah, I don't think Rakic is going to have that mentality of, can I kick this guy, because of how he did it last time. It wasn't off a kick. And in regards to the MCL, like, it's a nasty injury, but Dan, you'll know as well as I do, you're following this sport for years, multiple promotions. MCLs are quite a common injury. I'm not saying, like I say, it's a nasty injury, but they're very common, and most fighters have some sort of injury surrounding the knee, whether that's the MCL, ACL, LCL, meniscus, whatever, and I think it was just Alex's turn in that fight against Jan Blachowicz. And like I say, I mean, look at Thiago Santos as an example. Like, Santos in that John Jones fight did the MCL, ACL, LCL, meniscus, and then the MCL on the other leg as well. So that's a type of injury that's going to change a fighter. So I think from the injury perspective, it's a really good talking point. But unless I see something in this fight that's massively declined, I'm not going to go into the fight on the assumption that, everything's not okay. And also the other thing to mention as well, and this was something that I looked into as well, is Aleksandar Rakic's strength and conditioning coach is a guy called Richard Stordner from Austria. And he is legitimately one of the best globally in the world at what he does. And I know, and like I said, I haven't spoke to or seen Alex in around 3 or 4 years. There's nothing bad there. You just go different ways in life. But 3 or 4 years ago, when I was around Rakic and I was around Richard Stordner, Richard makes sure that Alex has got the right supplements at the right times, but also make sure Alex understood what he was taking as well. So I know that with Richard Stordner around Aleksandar Rakic, we're going to get a proper Aleksandar Rakic, if that makes sense. And from what I can see off Instagram, he's definitely there with Rakic. So again, that's something that I noticed as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, when you talk about being a peak athlete, I mean, I think that Aleksandar Rakic is right up there. I mean, they call him the Rocket for a reason. I bet this dude's vertical jump is something stupid. And you just look at the physique. And I mean, if I had the video game controller for Rakic, the dude would be a champion right now. Like, that's how talented.
Just on that as well, like, in regards to him being an athlete, he is a freak athlete. Like, stood next to him, he's a monster, big muscles in every single aspect of his body. But even in regards to like his weight cut, he's waking up pretty much on weight with just maybe a couple of pounds to lose. Like, he is the definition of a freak athlete.
Yeah, no, I believe it. I mean, just looking at him, you can see that. So yeah, the thing with me, I have a love-hate relationship with Rakic. Obviously you got to respect pure raw athleticism. The techniques are there and the tactics are too. The guy's very smart and he knows how to win. And I respect that quality a lot. But he has burnt me a couple times at the betting window. And that's why I have to bring that up here when, you're talking about a chalk price. Because the way I kind of view this matchup is you got a guy in Jiri Prochazka who's like the ultimate risk taker. And he's fighting a guy who's like the polar opposite in Rakic, who is like the ultimate play it safe guy. And that, I love that dynamic because something's going to have to give in this matchup, like straight up. So from a tactics perspective, there's the talk of the low kicks, which you saw Alex have success against Jiri. Jiri does not check kicks. We know that one of Rakic's biggest weapons is that low kick. You saw the Anthony Smith fight. Like, people think that he just took Anthony Smith down and laid on him. Dude, he literally dropped Anthony Smith with low kicks in that fight. You've seen the Jimmy Manuwa fight. But man, there's been times when I've bet on Rakic and been a little underwhelmed, like the Thiago Maeta fight. I thought we clearly won that fight, but I just wanted a little bit more. And then the Jan fight, man, so the injury is what it is. But like, I was thinking we take this guy down and he's not going to be able to get back up. Jan Blachowicz, one thing about him, he does not have the best get-up game. We've seen this for years. And Rakic didn't even shoot until round 2. And when he finally shot, easy treetop takedown, gets him down. Jan can't get up the entire round. I'm thinking, like, why didn't we do that in round 1? Round 1, he's banging with Jan Blachowicz, almost giving me a heart attack. And then round 3, we didn't go to the takedown soon enough, and the unfortunate injury happened. So I find myself very frustrated with Rakic. And the reason being is because I do hold him up to that standard. I do think he is that freak athlete you're talking about. I do think he has elite skills, and I do think he has the potential to be a top 5 guy. I'm not sure if it's something in the decision making and the fight IQ and maybe the killer instinct. There's just something, and I can't point my finger on it. Maybe you can help me with it. There's something that Jiri has that Rakic doesn't have as far as the killer instinct. But then there's something that Rakic has that Jiri doesn't have as far as the freak athleticism. So that's what makes it so intriguing for me, just from a stylistic perspective.
Yeah, like one thing you mentioned straight away there is the comparison between, not the comparison, but the mention of the Alex Pereira and Jiri Prochazka fight, because Jiri really wasn't checking those kicks, and he knew they were coming. And it's not that he knew they were coming in the cage. You watch any sort of tape on Pereira, you know those leg kicks are coming. Also a really interesting dynamic with Jamahal Hill. That's, a southpaw fight, which, I really love that as well. But like, the low kicks were coming and he did absolutely nothing to check them. So this is one of the things for me when I was sort of trying to figure out, well, is Alex going to be a little bit gun shy with the low kicks? Because if he's not, I think he can absolutely tear the lead leg of Prochazka up, sort of at will or for however long he wants to do it. But the differences between them both are, Jiri Prochazka's a very elusive striker, a bit unorthodox, unpredictable, certainly not a fighter that Rakic could get any guy into his fight camp and try to replicate Jiri. So it's definitely something that it could be one of them. Like Jiri could lose this fight until he doesn't, and then he knocks Rakic out. But that's the risk you take in any fight in the light heavyweight division, which I think either last year or the year before, the light heavyweight division had more knockouts even than the heavyweight division. So, that you're running the risk on any light heavyweight fight, but especially against these two guys. The one thing that I like about Rakic, though, is, and it's almost like one of these heavyweights, like Junior Dos Santos is the example I'm going to give you. He was a guy that was dead in dudes, explosive, knockout power in his prime. Then he got in a few wars. Then he got tagged a little bit. Then he starts to go to this point scoring style. And I think without the tagging and the knocking out and all that sort of stuff, Rakic has gone to that level. And I don't mind it. Like, from an entertainment perspective, you would prefer explosive Rakic that's dead in dudes. But, if you've got money on Rakic, you're going to like that style. The style that's safe and is going to win and you cash your ticket. You don't care how you cash your ticket. So I kind of like that. That sort of that new patient style of Rakic. And even in the Volkan Ozdemir fight, you could tell that he worked on his boxing, not only offensively but defensively, like managing range, coming just out of range, recognizing danger. Because pre-Volkan Ozdemir fight, his head was on the center line. He was there to be hit, and he rectified that. And maybe a part of rectifying that and developing as a fighter in regards to his defense has changed his offense. But like I say, he's still a successful fighter. The one thing I hate with Jiri Prochazka here, from like that Alex Pereira fight, like, go back and watch that finishing sequence. Prochazka closed the distance. He had him against the cage, and he was in a brawl, throwing punches from the hip. He didn't have a single finger, knuckle, hand up anywhere close to his face. And it was just a simple short hook from Pereira to knock him down before he finished him. But you watch it again and again, and then watch the slow-mo of it, and it's really, really bad. And then you go back and watch Prochazka's during the mid-range inside the center of the cage. His hands are low as well. And I just feel someone, even though Rakic has lost that, well, not lost, but is not showing that explosive side to him anymore. He's a technical fighter, and we expected him to blitz Jan, but Jan did a really good job of checking kicks and making it a little bit awkward for him. But like I say, I think, look, Jiri is going to be explosive, unorthodox, weird. Maybe it takes Rakic a round to figure it out. But I think from a natural striking perspective, going blow for blow, Rakic is more defensively aware, and the lack of defense from Jiri, I think Rakic is going to be able to find the shots he needs, even if he just point fight him, jab, straight punch, just touching Jiri up, maybe causing some cuts or some blood on his face, some visible damage, and just mind his P's and Q's. But I do agree with you. Look, I've been burnt on the betting line a couple of times with Rakic as well. And again, fight IQ, I think, does fall into that remit of potential reasons why he hasn't performed the way that we expect him to perform pre-fight. So again, that's a concern here as well. But like I say, stylistically, there's just a lot. There's upside for Rakic. The low kicks that aren't getting checked from Jiri, the lack of defense from Jiri is, he's liable to be hit. And at light heavyweight, that's not always the best sign. And then, the wrestling from Rakic, people forget that he's a solid wrestler. And when he's on top of Jiri, he's got really good control, really good control. Look at Smith. Smith's a black belt in BJJ. And he couldn't do anything against Rakic. Every time he started to stand back up, Rakic bettered that position and blocked the defensive transitions that Anthony Smith was using to get back up to his feet. So all in all, yes, it's a volatile fight. Would I be shocked if Prochazka knocked Rakic out? No. But the analysis, to me at least, I feel that Rakic wins this fight.
No, I mean, I get it completely. And I don't think that you're going to get much of a debate from me as far as the defensive liabilities from Prochazka are concerned. I mean, this is something that we've noticed from day one, even outside the UFC. Like, the way that Jiri fights, he's going to leave openings, but he's also going to get spectacular knockouts along the way. He's an offensive juggernaut. That's basically what he is, man. And with Rakic, it's kind of interesting because I agree with the point you made that he's definitely cleaned a lot of things up in the last few years. Like, for example, you watch that Devin Clark fight. He did get dropped twice in that fight. And then you watch the Volkan Ozdemir fight on the conversation of leg kicks, and he had like a golf ball on his calf from Volkan kicking him. And ever since that point, now he's the guy that's been implementing devastating leg kicks. So I definitely think that leg kick factor is going to be there for Alex. And man, I know what you're saying too about the way that Jiri closed the distance against Alex. Man, that short left hook was so clean, but I know what you're saying too. The way that Jiri just closed the distance on him, like, you'd expect a little more patience, especially considering how successful he was in round one. All three judges scored round one for Jiri. He took down Alex, landed some good ground and pound on the feet. There were times when he corralled him against the fence, and he was teeing off too. And I'm just curious if he can make things wild with Alex Rakic, because I'm thinking Alex Pereira and Alex. You got to say it a little bit different, but with Aleksandar Rakic, I'm not sure if Alex likes these kind of chaotic type fights, and that's where I think that Jiri is going to excel. But with that being said, to have that chaotic kind of balls to the wall, killer be killed style, you're going to leave openings too, and that's what Adam's big point is. So I mean, I can't debate your point. The openings are going to be there for Rakic. But what I'm curious about is, can Jiri make Rakic fight that chaotic kind of fight? Take him away from that safe, pointy kind of style, whether it's leg kicking and running, whether it's takedowns and top control. If Jiri can make this chaotic, that's where I think he can catch the chin of a guy like Rakic. Just to give a little bit of a narrative, I really think there's going to be chaos at UFC 300. I think that the MMA gods aren't going to allow too many people to play it safe. I think there's going to be special, beautiful KOs at UFC 300, and Jiri has the recipe to produce that. The way he makes violence happen is nasty. Like, those finishing combos he had on Volkan and Dom Reyes were nasty. And the way that he kind of clowns guys in the middle of fights, like, it's little subtle things, but he plays with guys when he's in there. Like, he's taunting you in a real subtle way that makes guys fight very uncharacteristic. And they're like, damn, I've never experienced anything like this before. And then that Glover fight, Jiri even criticizes himself as like, oh, that was my worst performance. But that was like one of the best fights in the history of the sport. To escape all the submission attempts against the black belt like Glover's caliber. You can remember that famous arm triangle escape where he did the backwards roll, and then he ends up submitting him in the 5th round. Like, man. So it's a tough one for me to call. I just think it's a dog or pass situation. I think they run it 10 times. You're going to get a different outcome each time. But for this event, we're going to go on opposite sides. I'm going to go with the former champ Jiri. You're going to go with the rising contender Rakic. And may the best man win, Adam. This is one hell of a fight. And I hope Rakic gets his rematch with Jan, because I want my money back.
Yeah, and do you know what? I actually mentioned this on my podcast as well today. Like, take away everything away from, the analysis and who you may or may not be betting here, but it would be nice for Rakic to win this fight, because look, Jiri is a contender. He's in contention for a championship. He was a former champion. He's just come off a loss in the championship fight, but he's still in and around championship contention. Whereas Rakic, I don't think has ever hit that conversation to that extent. But then you've obviously got Alex Pereira, who's the current champion, Jamahal Hill, who's, you know, the contender, the guy who never lost his belt. You've got you've got a real, like, it was only about 3 or 4 years ago we're thinking, you know what, this division's quite thin. It'd be nice to have some real talent up there. Jan Blachowicz is still there. Of course, the best UFC light heavyweight, Magomed Ankalaev, is up there as well. So look, it'd be nice for Rakic to be in that mix. Imagine if we had a top of a light heavyweight division where anybody could fight anybody could have a title fight between the names of Alex Pereira, Jamahal Hill, Magomed Ankalaev, Aleksandar Rakic, Jiri Prochazka, Jan Blachowicz. You know what? It just, and even I wouldn't even rule out Israel Adesanya coming up to the light heavyweight division, and that would put him in the mix as well. So I think it would be really fun for the division for a Rakic win as well, just to add that mix up at the top.
For it to be fun, he's got to make it fun. And hopefully for his case and his sake, he's got the perfect dance partner to make it fun. And if he can capitalize on Jiri's openings and get himself a highlight reel knockout, all of a sudden no one cares about all those boring fights you had. All of a sudden, that's the old you. He's a brand new man. The way that people idolize these fighters like they're not real humans, like they're superheroes. You just get one knockout, everybody forgets about all the boring fights you had, and all of a sudden you're in the mix. And at UFC 300 with all the eyes on you, I mean, I think that these guys are going to be so motivated that, like, they have to make a statement here. Like, these guys desperately want to be in title contention, especially like you mentioned, you got Magomed Ankalaev waiting in the wings. Like, if Rakic or Jiri doesn't put on an impressive performance, Magomed could get that next title shot. If these two want to bypass him, they got to go out there and make a statement when everybody's watching. So, I mean, I cannot wait for this. We're going opposites. You're going Rakic. I'm going Jiri, but may the best man win. Adam, I truly appreciate your time. The fans can follow you at MMA Play 365. Any message for them before I let you go?
Not a lot. Just enjoy the fights and buckle up, because the first fight of the night, the first fighter to walk out to that cage is going to be Cody Garbrandt, followed very shortly by Deiveson Figueiredo. How can you top that? Before you've even got settled into the card, before you've even got yourself a drink, before you've even, you know, started to think about UFC for the night. Deiveson Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt's going to be on your screen. And guess what? 12 more fights are after that as well. And they only get better as they go on. So yeah, look, from anybody listening, just fucking enjoy this card, because it is once in a lifetime, my opinion, the best UFC card we've ever had. And you know, it'll probably get topped at UFC 400. Mathematically, I'm not sure how many years that's going to be, but yeah, it's a crazy card. Just enjoy it.
And before I let you go, one last thing. I'm getting all my guests to do this. Are you down to give a quick pick for every fight on the card? I'll mention the matchup. You just give a pick, no analysis.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Jamahal Hill versus Alex Pereira.
Jamahal Hill.
My man. Zhang Weili versus Xiaonan.
Zhang Weili.
Boo. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway.
Justin Gaethje.
Charles Du Bronx versus Arman Tsarukyan.
Arman Tsarukyan.
Bo Nickal versus Cody Brundage.
Nah, I'm joking. Bo Nickal.
Are you risking 25 units to win one?
Oh, obviously, yeah. I've already dropped 30 just to win just over one.
Just pick winners, right? Hey, Sterling versus Kattar.
Sterling.
Holm versus Harrison.
Harrison.
Diego Lopez versus Sodiq Yusuff.
Lopez.
Jalen Turner versus Moicano.
Turner.
Andrade versus Marina. Jim Miller versus Bobby Green.
Bobby.
Deiveson Dice Dugea Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt.
God of War.
Adam Newsome, I sincerely appreciate your time. Best of luck this weekend. Y'all hit up my boy, and I'll see you very soon. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Calvin Kattar, he's 23-7, taking on the former bantamweight champion Aljamain Sterling, who's 23-4. And currently, they got it. Aljamain Sterling -170. The comeback on Calvin Kattar is +150. And joining me to break down this featherweight matchup is longtime friend of the show, the owner of Daily Fan MMA, and now with Establish the Run. I'm talking about Mr. Brett Appley. Brett, welcome back to Half the Battle.
Thank you for having me, man. It's good to be here. I'm stoked for this week. I mean, you know, we joke around a lot. There's not a lot of great cards, this and that, but we've had some absolutely awesome cards to start this year, and this is one of the very best cards ever put together on paper. So I could not be more excited. Happy to be here talking some fights with you.
I mean, Brett, they had me at Jamahal and Xiaonan main and co-main event, and then you tell me it's UFC 300. Davison Figueiredo versus Cody's the first fight of the card. I mean, this is as stacked as it gets. Like, I lived through 100 and 200, and on paper, this is better than both. I mean, John Fitch was on the main card at 100, so I think that 300 is on a different level, my man. But let's get right down to business, because this featherweight matchup, it's interesting. Calvin Kattar's been out for a while. He's coming off 2 losses, a close split decision against Josh Emmett, the injury against Arnold Allen, and Aljamain Sterling recently lost his belt to O'Malley. He's moving up to featherweight, which I think is a great move for him. I mean, the guy spoke many times about how he just cut a ridiculous amount of weight, how it was just getting to him. And honestly, man, like, one of the biggest criticisms I've had for Sterling is deep in the fights, the championship rounds of the Cejudo fight, the championship rounds of the Jan fights. Like, he's hanging on for dear life. And you look at the guy's physique. I know for a fact Sterling's not skipping his runs. I know that Sterling's not eating cheat meals. It's just that those weight cuts were brutal. So what expectations do you have for Sterling coming up here to featherweight, a little bit more water in his body and brain?
I mean, that's a good question. I never feel confident enough to like say for sure what the expectation will be, just because I don't know. And until I haven't seen it, until I've seen it, it's hard to make assumptions. But yeah, he's going to be fighting bigger grapplers. I think that's a concern. Harder hitters. He's coming off a knockout loss. How will that affect him? And I think one of the issues with Sterling is that he's a lot of his grappling control is dependent on the backpack, on back take. So it's less about a weight class for me and more about like, is his grappling style going to be effective enough against more physical opponents, or will he be forced to stand and strike more often? In which I still think he has passed the victory that way. But I'm just generally curious to see how he looks on the scales, how he looks in the octagon, how he looks returning from a knockout. These are all questions that I'm excited to see answered.
Yeah, and with Calvin Kattar, one thing about him, man, is he fights behind his jab, which is something you love to see. He's got one of the nastiest step-through right hands in the game. I'll never forget when he made his debut against Feely, and when he caught him with that right hand, it was like, oh my God, who's this guy? Because, he was like a plus 350 dog in that fight, right? So immediately you took note, oh, okay, this guy could be a future top 15 guy. And I think he's been doing his thing. It's just coming off the injury, and even the fight with Emmett, although Emmett's a completely different matchup than Sterling. And a lot of people just like to say, oh, it was this robbery, but they don't talk about what happened in the fight. And I felt like the first 3 rounds, Kattar was very gun shy. Now, granted, Emmett's got ridiculous power. Ask Bryce Mitchell. I mean, Emmett's got the most knockdowns in featherweight history, Brett. So yeah, I don't think we should probably hold it against Kattar too much that he was kind of gun shy in that fight. And also, I say gun shy, you look at the numbers. I mean, he still put up over 100 significant strikes in 5 rounds, not in 3. But the thing about Kattar, though, like when you count him out, that's when he'll go out there against Giga Chikadze and just have an eye-opening performance. And that Arnold Allen fight, listen, I bet on Arnold Allen in that spot. And up until the injury, like, it was beautiful what Arnold Allen was doing. But like, Arnold Allen and Josh Emmett fight nothing like Sterling at all. Sterling will spam volume, but you know exactly where Sterling is most dangerous. Sterling is dangerous when he takes your back, he locks in that body triangle. They call him the human backpack. I mean, that's where he's most dangerous. But Kattar's got a 91% takedown defense, the last man to take him down. You got to date all the way back to Zabit Magomed Sharipov. And I'm actually glad that I'm bringing this fight up, because this is my biggest fear for Kattar. Kind of getting backpack, kind of getting neutralized those first 2 rounds. Then Aljamain hangs on for dear life in the third, gets his ass whooped in the third, but Kattar loses a 29-28. That's what I'd be worried about if I'm taking these dog odds on Kattar, Brett.
Yeah, I mean, and those are all genuine concerns. I think it's a tricky fight to analyze just because Kattar really hasn't fought that many grapplers. I mean, 91% takedown defense. Like, yeah, you go through it, and yeah, 1 takedown given up against Zabit, 1 takedown given up against Fishgold. And I mean, I watched those exchanges earlier today, and it's like the Zabit takedown came late in the 3rd round off Kattar throwing a flying knee. So like, in the final 30 seconds, what does that really matter? Fishgold, was against the cage, and he sort of did give up his back standing. So like, ultimately, I respect Aljo's grappling enough to like presume that if he attacks Kattar aggressively with takedowns, he can probably land some of them. He's just an effective wrestler. And from there, he'll either need to switch onto the backpack, or Kattar's probably just standing up to his feet. So that alone presents risk, because if the fight plays out on the feet, I mean, Kattar's a good boxer. I know you mentioned him being gun shy, but I don't think he's going to be particularly gun shy against Sterling. He doesn't really present a lot of power threat, at least in comparison to someone like Josh Emmett. I see Sterling more being disengaging, kind of playing around the outside of the octagon, kicking at the legs of Kattar, not really wanting to engage in the pocket. I'm actually wondering if Aljo is even going to initiate wrestling exchanges early in this fight, because I feel like he'll maybe just want to get his feet under him a little bit, feel out the weight class. He's coming off a knockout loss. Just get some reps underneath him, rather than going out there diving on legs in the first minute. So I wouldn't be surprised if this fight extends at all. But yeah, I do think it's an interesting fight to analyze, just because we really have not seen Calvin Kattar on the ground much at all, and that it makes it tricky.
It does, and I have an inkling that Kattar's not like his teammate and best friend Rob Font, in the sense that I mean, I think Kattar has like a high school wrestling background, and from what I can tell, he can get back up. That, at least from what I can tell. But a big comparison a lot of people have been making, they say that this fight could go like the Aljamain Sterling versus Pedro Munoz fight, where it's a 3-round striking fight, a lot of volume, and Aljo cleanly takes the first 2, maybe slows down in the third. But the thing about it that you got to understand is that while Kattar and Munoz might be around the same age, Munoz is like 5'6", right? This is like a real bantamweight. Like, Kattar is a big 45, and he's like close to 6 feet tall. We only have 2 fight sample size of Sterling fighting against guys that size. We have the Corey Sandhagen fight, where we just took his back once and ran through him. I'm curious what would happen in a rerun. And the O'Malley fight, where the first round, not much happened. Second round, he took a desperate shot, and it wasn't even a desperate takedown shot. It was more like a desperate attempt at closing the distance, because not a lot was happening, and he was like, fuck, I got to make something happen. That's when he got sniped. So it's really tough to me. And then you got Kattar, who's 36, coming off a serious injury. I'm not sure if it was ACL or MCL, but it was a real injury.
Yeah.
You know, Sterling's going to be kicking those legs a lot, but man, I just think there's a big boxing difference between the two. It's really hard for me to have a lot of confidence, you know, with one coming off an injury, the other one coming off a knockout loss, like both kind of, you know, closer to the end of their careers than the beginning, you know? So it's a tough one for me. I'd love to see Kattar win as a fan. Like, where's your lean kind of?
I mean, I think I have to lean towards Sterling, because I think he has multiple paths to victory. And as much as I do like the offensive boxing of Kattar, he gets hit, you know, as much as he lands strikes throughout the course of his UFC career. I mean, his metrics are a bit skewed from the fight against Max Holloway. He's absorbing, on average, more than 7 significant strikes per minute, while landing just over 5 significant strikes per minute. But you go through his entire UFC history, like he was competitive on the numbers with Feely, with Burgos. Moicano easily outstruck him. Competitive on the numbers with Fishgold, got outstruck by Zabit. Competitive with Stevens, you know, and then he edged out Emmett and Giga. And the difference with Sterling is that Sterling just doesn't absorb many strikes. And I mean, even against Sean O'Malley, he was not, absorbing many strikes up until that final exchange. I do not see Sterling engaging in exchanges which are going to allow him to get hit and get hit hard often. So if you're projecting the fight over the course of 3 rounds, it's like most likely that striking is going to be competitive. I don't think it's likely that Kattar's going to like easily outstrike Aljo over 3 rounds. And that's only if he's able to defend takedowns. There's another world where Aljo just gets him down, gets on his back in round 1. Round 1 done. Round 2 starts, like you said, he takes him down, gets on his back. Now round 2's done. Well, it's putting Kattar in a position of having to come back and try and win by knockout in round 3. And obviously that's a challenging outcome. So I just think the diversity of Aljo's game, his grappling upside, makes him the perceived favorite in this matchup, along with his defensive metrics. But of course, again, coming off a knockout loss is an X factor. Coming up a weight class is an X factor. So there's so much variance in mixed martial arts, and that's why we love it. But I do lean toward Aljamain Sterling just to neutralize striking exchanges and have a bit more success with grappling, probably to take a decision.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're wrong, and I'm not going to give you any pushback on that argument. Like, I think that's if you're breaking down, a pick for Sterling, that's probably one of the ways it gets done. So I don't disagree. I really don't know. Like, I really, really genuinely do not know. And then oftentimes when that's the case, I take the dog, but I can't sit here and look you in the eye with a straight face and tell you that I'm confident about this dog. It's not like we're talking about Mr. Hill, I'm going to lean with Kattar. I think that if Kattar can establish his jab and kind of make Sterling a bit hesitant and gun shy, he can come out here and win this fight. But yeah, it's a tough one. Next up in the bantamweight division, we got a match between the former champ Holly Holm. She's 15-6, welcoming newcomer Kayla Harrison, the former PFL champ, who's 16-1 to the bantamweight division. So Kayla has never fought at bantamweight. I mean, she's been fighting at lightweight, Brett. She's been fighting at 155. She's not dropping to 45. She's dropping to 35. Currently, they got it. Kayla Harrison minus 450. The comeback on Holly Holm is plus 350. Now, one of my favorite bets that I've made in 2024 was Manon Fiorot at plus 170 odds against Erin Blanchfield. And I love me some Erin Blanchfield. I just thought it was a bad matchup for her. I thought at the very least it should be a pick'em. And you give me plus 170 odds, I'm taking that. The thing here, can Holly Holm replicate a similar game plan? I mean, she's been up against Ronda, the original OG of the style that Kayla brings to the table. Bigger, athletic judo player. You know what happens when Kayla gets on top? She's got a nasty armbar. She's very heavy on top, but her stand-up has not really developed that much, and she's going to have to close the distance on a very mobile target in Holly Holm. So at 40 plus years of age, can Holly Holm still set back another prospect?
I mean, I definitely think it's possible. I'd be lying if I said I was confident in Kayla Harrison at minus 4XX odds. And I'm glad you brought up the Fiorot bet, because it feels similar to like the main events from the past couple weeks where Blanchfield was a favorite over Fiorot and she's a superior grappler, and should she get on top of Fiorot often, she was going to dominate that fight. But if that outcome did not occur, you could argue that Fiorot is just the outright favorite, the superior striker. And then you got Brendan Allen last week, where Brendan Allen, will just abandon his wrestling at times. He doesn't even wrestle that often. The fight plays out on the feet against Chris Curtis. You could argue Chris Curtis is the favorite outright in boxing exchanges. Similarly with Harrison versus Holly Holm, of course, Harrison is a much better grappler. She's so much more physical than Holly Holm, and there's a good chance she goes out there, lands takedowns, completely dominates Holm. Holm can't get up, and it's one-way traffic. But if that outcome does not occur, I mean, Holm might just win. Holm is a superior striker. She's very experienced. She can counter well. She can kick. And Kayla Harrison is really, really great in top position. She's very physical in top position. But all the other aspects of her game, I mean, obviously her judo is outstanding too, but the other aspects of her game, like, still are relatively green. And so watching her beat up some scrubs in PFL, like, doesn't exactly make me confident that she'll go out there and dust Holly Holm, who I think, again, if you're talking about sampling here, which was an issue kind of in the last fight with Calvin Kattar, I mean, who are the great grapplers that Holly Holm's competing against? We saw her get taken down and submitted in late in the fight against Misha Tate in 2016, and Valentina Shevchenko took her down a few times in 2016. And since 2016, Holly Holm's been taken down once by Raquel Pennington and once by Ketlin Vieira. And I can guarantee you, since 2016, Holly Holm has leveled up her wrestling game. You can see it offensively. And I'm fairly confident that her defensive wrestling is also better now than it was 8 years ago. Still, it's tough to make a great case for Holly Holm when her only chance to win this fight is to neutralize the grappling, keep the fight upright, and then win a slower paced competitive kickboxing match.
But that said, Brett, though,
yeah,
Kayla's only chance is getting it to the mat. I don't think Kayla can win a stand-up fight here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I mostly agree with you. I wish Holly Holm landed more than 3.2 strikes per minute, but no, I agree. If the fight plays out in the fee, I'm pretty confident Holly Holm's going to win. I'm willing to believe the grappler has the tools to get the job done here, but I mean, are we certain she's making the weight? Are we certain this fight's even happening? It's
Yeah.
When's the last time we've seen someone drop 2 weight classes? Or skip a weight class. I feel like there's definitely a chance that without having seen Harrison fight 135 pounds, like a weight cut like that could affect her in ways we don't know. And maybe she has a great first round and then gets tired and then she can't effectively wrestle in rounds 2 and rounds 3 and gets outstruck and loses a decision. I think that's a plausible outcome too. So I'm hoping Harrison looks good. I'm sort of tired of the Holly Holm main events. I'd love to see some new blood in this division, and I love me some grapplers. But I think there are risks here with Harrison dropping multiple weight classes and with a semi one-dimensional game coming from an organization that's simply not as good as the one she's entering.
So I got to ask you and the fans, will Kayla Harrison make weight? Let me know in the comments, because I mean, I've been to 2 of her fights. PFL came to Atlanta the last 2 years in a row and they did 3-week stints here. So I've seen her fight 2 separate years here. I mean, she dominated the competition, but who did she fight? Right. I mean, it was really soft competition. It was also at 155 pounds. And like when I saw her at 155, this was not a girl that had a lot of body fat or like had big love handles and looked like, oh yeah, you can definitely drop. It was like, where's this weight going to come from? Like 45 I can see, but like 35 is like, damn, like if she even like she's gonna have to weigh out her meals and like know like the macros and micros and the little intricacies of things that I don't even know the half of. And if she just eats 1 olive instead of 2 berries, that could botch her whole weight cut. You understand what it's like? That kind of stuff, Brett.
Yeah. And the thing is, if there's anyone that I would trust to make weight, it's probably someone like Kayla Harrison, who has Olympic gold medals, and the type of discipline you need to get to that kind of level in any sport is not the kind of discipline that I have. So, comparing it to all these random fighters making their debuts every week, I feel like Kayla Harrison has studied what she needs to do as far as making the weight. She has a team around her that's helping her make weight. I think if she didn't really truly believe she was going to make this weight, that she wouldn't have taken this fight and the UFC wouldn't have signed her. We're still just hoping, so until we see it on the scales, we don't know. But if there's anyone that I would put faith into, it's someone with the discipline like Kayla Harrison.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't take a genius to pick a -450. I am picking the favorite here, but like, I just think she's catching Holly at a good time. I think that it is going to be sketchy on the feet, but luckily, to Brett's point, Holly doesn't really throw as much as you want. There's a lot more sounds. There's a lot more running around the octagon than we'd probably like. And lately, she's been into clinching a lot lately. If she comes out here and tries to establish a clinch with Kayla, I'm not saying she's going to get judo throwed, but she might get judo throwed, Brett Appley. And from there, the fight might be over shortly after. So, yeah, I am definitely going with Kayla as well, but there's a lot of intangibles, and you'd be a fool to not mention them. So let's see what happens on Friday. We'll take it from there. And, yeah, so before I get you out of here, man, are you down to give me a quick pick for every fight on this card?
Sure, I am. And for just to throw it out there, I haven't researched every fight on the card, but I am happy to give you a quick initial pick.
Poatan versus Jamahal Hill.
Let's go with the underdog, Jamahal Hill.
My man. Zhang Weili or Yan Xiaonan?
I will take Zhang Weili.
Boo. Justin Gaethje or Max Holloway?
Are you picking Yan Xiaonan outright? I haven't, heard your takes, obviously.
I mean, I pick her every single fight, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm sure you pick Zhang Weili quite a lot too.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, like, the only time that Xiaonan has truly not covered her price was against Carla, right? And before that fight, I said I'd better pick a odds versus any woman at this weight class, maybe except Tatiana, right? And the only other time we lost was +270 against Marina, which I thought we won that fight. And either way, I'll make that bet 100 more times. Like a split decision that's +270, give me that. So I know where I don't want Yan to be, but I also know I'll bet her at plus 380 to plus 400 versus any woman on planet Earth that weighs 115 pounds. So, and if I've bet her every single UFC fight, why would I stop in her title fight? I can't. I just have to. It just is what it is. So Gaethje or Holloway?
Give me Max Holloway, man.
Okay.
I don't know if many people are on that train or not, but I think he can pull it out.
Charles do Bronx or Arman Tsarukyan?
I'll go Tsarukyan.
Bo Nickal or Cody Brundage?
Bo Nickal, easy one.
And I have to ask you this because I ask every guest this: are you laying 25 units to win 1 on Bo Nickal?
2,500 units actually to win 10.
Oh yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I was about to say. Yeah. Jiri Prochazka or Aleksandar Rakic?
Let's go Rakic.
Sodiq Yusuff or Diego Lopez?
Let's go Sodiq. I haven't researched that one, but I'm sort of on the Lopez fade train here.
Yeah, he has the prototype of the style that Brett likes to pick against, which I understand why. Jalen Turner or Hinata Moicano?
Let's go with another dog, Moicano.
Okay. Outright, I like it. Jessica Andrade or Marina Rodriguez?
Very tough one. Let's go with Marina.
Let's go. Bobby Green or Jim Miller?
Let's go with Bobby Green.
So you don't think Jim will be the first guy to win at 100, 200, and now 300?
He could be. I didn't pick it, but he could be.
And last but not least, one of your all-time favorite fighters, Davison Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt.
I know, right? What's the world coming to here? I'll go with Figueiredo.
My man, Brett, I sincerely appreciate your time. The fans can follow you at Brett Appley, _P_T. And then also Establish the Run. You've been killing it over there. You moved from Daily Fan MMA to Establish the Run. Anything you want to plug, go ahead. And thanks for joining me.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me. If anyone wants additional DraftKings content, that's sort of what we specialize in over Establish the Run. We've been there for a month. We got a $50,000 winner. We got a $65,000 winner already. There's, I think, $200,000 to first place this weekend. Someone's going to win. It's not the house. It's one of the players. And we do provide, some of the best tools in the industry, I like to believe, to help give you the best chance to win money. So if anyone wants some additional DraftKings advice, feel free to check us out at Establish the Run.
Look, he's a really humble guy, but I'm just going to tell y'all right now, the two best guys in daily fantasy sports for MMA are Brett Appley and Kyle Marley, and they're both on this show. So, I mean, y'all got to check them out if you haven't already. I'm sure you already know about them, but if you don't, get on it. These are the guys you go to when it comes to DFS for MMA. Brett, thank you so much for your time. Best of luck this weekend. Hope you kill it. And sit back and enjoy the fights this weekend, man. Have a good time. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Sodiq Yusuff, he's 13-3, taking on Diego Lopez, who's 23-6. And currently, they got it. Diego Lopez -140. The comeback on Sodiq Yusuff is +120. And joining me to break down this featherweight matchup is former UFC top 10 lightweight contender and longtime friend of the show, James the Texecutioner Vic. James, welcome back to Half the Battle.
What's up, man? Glad to be back. Always glad to come on.
My man. So let's get right down to business because this featherweight matchup between Sodiq Yusuff and Diego Lopez, hell of a fight. It's funny because you're the guy that told me about Sodiq Yusuff back when you were a top 10 UFC lightweight and Sodiq Yusuff was just making a name for himself. You were like, dude, pay attention to this guy. And fast forward, we're at UFC 300. He's in the top 15. He's been doing his thing. How have you felt about his career progression?
Really good. So Sadiq's like my little brother. We trained together on for 7 or 8 years. We lived in the fighter house together. The fighter house my coach had. We lived there together. He's like a brother to me. He did good so far. Obviously, he's had a good career so far. A lot of injuries have plagued him. He's had a lot of bad issues and injuries and stuff. And he just needs to, stay healthy more than anything. And I think he's going to go on a serious run.
And I guess the big question is, from your takeaway, what do you think happened in that last fight against Barboza? Because like in round one, he looked like the best fighter on planet Earth. And Sodiq's not a round one or bust guy. Like you've seen the Mike Davis fight, you've seen the Arnold Allen fight. Historically speaking, Sodiq can push in deep waters. Do you think it was just a case where, I mean, he thought he had the guy dead and he went for broke, emptied the clip, or what do you think happened?
Not at all. If he emptied the clip, he wouldn't have been able to fight 4 more rounds. His defense saved him. He had injuries. His shoulder was hurt. His hand was hurt. He had injuries. Of course, he probably didn't say that. So, I might be the first person saying that publicly, but he had injuries. I think if his shoulder was messed up pretty bad, especially after that first round. And, like I said, Sodiq has had a lot of injuries. He's had a lot of back issues. He's had over the years, he trained super hard. And Sodiq is not someone that, like you said, he's not a 1 round and go for broke guy. He can fight 5 rounds. He fought 5 rounds basically with 1 arm. If you notice after that, after the first round, he quit throwing. He was just more defensive because he couldn't throw. Just injuries, in my opinion.
So you think he's had the adequate amount of time off to heal, to get better? Because you have to be 100% to fight this guy, Diego Lopez. He's a serious finisher.
Yeah, I do think he does. And I also think Sadiq's not easy to finish. The difference is like Sadiq was taught everything the right way. So Sadiq has real defense. Sadiq is not easy to just catch clean. And he has world-class defense. That's what kind of carried him through with the Barboza fights. And I think this is a good matchup for him, to be honest with you. I don't see why he's the underdog. I think that on paper, they're basically similar fighters. They both box. They both throw a lot of calf kicks, and they both like doing jiu-jitsu. Sadiq has not showed how good his jiu-jitsu is. He hasn't really showed how good it is. But I don't see this guy beating him on the ground. I don't see this guy being able to submit him. I think Sadiq's better everywhere, in my opinion.
Yeah, because here's the thing with Diego Lopez. So as far as like the minute winning ability and the in-betweens, that's where I kind of criticize him. But as far as just the opportunistic finishing ability, he's got it. And he's got some of the best no-gi jiu-jitsu, I'd say, in the featherweight division. He comes from like a family of like jiu-jitsu guys. Like his dad's like a Corral belt. So he's like been in there since he was just a little kid. So luckily for Sodiq, he's been training at a real jiu-jitsu gym, since he started the sport. So that's good. So as far as the line is concerned, because you brought up a good point, why is Sodiq the underdog? Well, it's something called recency bias. I mean, Sodiq lost his last fight. Had that fight never happened, or had he won that fight, he would be a favorite here. So that's a very valid point on your part. But momentum counts for a lot in this sport, and Sodiq's going to have to show up for this one, because this guy, like I said, if you have an off night against Diego Lopez, he will go out there and finish you. That's just what he's capable of.
For sure. I don't see Sadiq getting finished. I'll be honest with you. How many people have finished Sadiq?
Nobody. Well,
yeah, the guy who did it before the UFC. What's his name? Arnold Allen kicked him in the head. He survived that. He got hit with a spinning hook kick by Barboza to survive that. I don't see him getting finished. I think Sadiq wins. I think there's a good chance Sadiq, if he tries to stand in the pocket and bang with Sadiq, I think Sadiq knocks him out. Which this guy doesn't get finished either. It's not like this is a tough fight. I'm not unrealistic. This is a very hard fight. I just feel like everything he does, it definitely on the feet, Sadiq is better, and on the ground, I just don't see, as good as this kid's jiu-jitsu is his jiu-jitsu better than the world champion, the black belt world champion Sadiq has been training with for 10 years now, and I don't think so. I don't think his jiu-jitsu is better than Jamil's or Muhammad or DJ Jackson, Tim Spriggs. These are all black belt world champions. Gi and no gi both. So I don't see him being able to finish Sadiq on the ground at all.
Yeah, and one thing about it, if you watch Diego Lopez's fights, he doesn't go for takedowns. It's usually people taking him down, and that's where he's able to capitalize. Like you watch that Evloev fight, and he had Evloev in that deep-ass knee bar. But listen, Evloev was offensively grappling. Evloev was establishing the takedowns. I mean, if Sodiq keeps this on the outside, he's got nasty calf kicks. You know what he can do upstairs as well. Just has to be defensively sound, which, I mean, he has been for the majority of his career. And I think he can pick apart a guy like Diego Lopez and frustrate him. And he just has to, if he's going to go to the ground, he has to only go to the ground on his terms. You know what I'm saying? Like, you cannot play this guy's game, because the guy only has like, he has a limited game, but he's damn good at that limited game.
For sure, and it's not an easy fight. I think someone's going to have to do something big. Like someone's going to have to get a knockdown to hurt somebody, or someone's going to have to get control time for a whole round or something. Because if not, it's going to be back and forth, and the decision usually goes to the younger prospects. We found that out the other day in Mexico City when I cornered my fighter Victor. I thought he clearly won the fights, but the younger prospect got the decision. So Sadiq definitely needs to come out and do something big. He needs to hurt the guy or take him down, control him for an entire round. He needs to make it obvious. If it's a close fight, I think it's going to be hard to get a decision.
Dude, on that topic, okay, because I remember watching that Victor Altamirano fight against Felipe dos Santos, the one you're referring to. And like, Victor was like a plus 250 dog. He was like a plus 300 dog. He was a big time underdog because the other kid had just had a really good fight with Manel Cap. When that decision was announced, I know y'all were livid, but like, were people like throwing trash into the octagon? Were people going crazy? Like, how did the Mexican crowd respond to that?
They weren't throwing trash, but they were pissed. They were mad. I mean, they booed, and they didn't just boo for 20 seconds. They booed for like 3 minutes. They were pissed. They booed the guy the whole time he was in the ring. They booed, they cheered for Victor when he walked out and everything, like when he was exiting the octagon. But, yeah, they were pissed. They were very mad, and it was a dope experience, and it was a hostile crowd when the Mexican guys didn't win, for sure.
How did you kind of corral your fighter a little bit and calm him down and let him know that he had a great performance despite, the BS?
I mean, honestly, I just told him, I said, Victor, sometimes, stuff happens and it's out of your control. But in my mind, you won that fight. I think the majority of people think you thought he won that fight. So I just told him, obviously just keep training, keep progressing, getting better again. But he did nothing wrong. Keep his head up, it happens. It's easy to say, don't leave it in the hands of the judges. That's way easier said than done, especially at that weight class. I told him, I just say, I think I really thought you won the fight, and there's really nothing else we can do. We can, I talked to Sean Shelby after the fight, and they're obviously going to give him another fight and everything. But it was very, very depressing for sure. Very disappointing for the kid, because that's a lot of money he lost on that fight. That win and show money is light years apart, so, he lost a lot of money and by not getting that decision. But, he has a good attitude and a good work ethic. So hopefully we're going to bounce back and he'll be good.
Yeah, I'm glad they're giving him another fight, as they should. And so back to this, man. One thing that I noticed when you look at the stats between Sodiq and Diego is in Sodiq's last fight against Edson Barboza and even his fight against Mike Davis, Sodiq landed more output in both those fights than Diego has in all his UFC fights combined. So what I'm trying to say is, if this fight goes the distance and they're just banging it out, I really think that Sodiq has a big output advantage in this spot. It's just going to come down to tactics, because like I said at the very beginning, and now I'm kind of repeating myself, Diego is an opportunistic finisher, but I don't think he's the kind of guy that's going to pick someone apart, that's going to put a volume clinic. I just think it's more like, you just have to be very careful. If you enter this guy's guard, I mean, he's got to be very exhausted. You got to be on your P's and Q's, and on the feet, he can crack too. But like I said, those in-betweens, it's few and far between. That's where I really think that Sodiq can kind of pull away on the cards, should it go all three.
For one thing, Sadiq is so explosive and athletic, you can't throw volume on him. There's a reason why everybody don't just come up forward swinging all wild, throwing volume on him. That's why I always thought Sadiq would be a good matchup for Holloway, because you can't throw. Sadiq is almost similar, but he throws more volume than Tyrone Woodley. You can't throw a bunch. Nobody ever just came forward swinging on Woodley, because it's one explosion and the fight's over. Sadiq hasn't knocked a ton of people out, but I think it's because they don't throw volume. Sadiq has one-hit knockout power, and he's accurate. And I mean, he's so good at boxing that you can't throw volume on him unless it's kicks or he's hurt. So you're right. The guy, if he comes forward trying to throw volume, he's going to get caught. So I think that he needs to mix some stuff up. The guy needs to go for takedowns, threaten him. He needs to get Sadiq tired, in which that works both ways. But I like the matchup. I think it's a great matchup for Sadiq, and I'm not in the UFC anymore, so I'm betting my money on Sadiq. So I'm allowed to bet.
I mean, speaking of his knockouts, you remember back in the day when Sodiq knocked that dude out and hit the Harlem Shake?
Yeah. I mean, Sadiq had some good knockouts. I think in the UFC, it's harder to take a risk because the stakes are so high. Like when you lose half your money, like we just talked about with Victor. So it's harder to take a risk. If Sadiq would open up more, I think he would start getting more finishes because this kid has world-class boxing and MMA.
So, I mean, I think we're both going Sadiq here. I mean, the fans know what my concerns are. I fully respect Diego's finishing ability and his no-gi jiu-jitsu. I think it's unbelievable, but I truly believe that Sadiq can outpoint this guy. I think that Sadiq can hurt this guy. It just has to be careful because Diego is dangerous. Now, Vic, before I get you out of here, man, are you down to give me a quick pick on every fight of this card? I'll just name the matchup. You just give a pick, no analysis.
Let's do it.
All right, my man. So, Jamahal Hill versus Alex Pereira.
Man, it's scary. I don't know. If Jamahal Hill wasn't coming off such a bad injury, I would definitely say him because he's so big and long. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know because as good as Alex Pereira is, he can knock a heavyweight out with one punch too. As hard as he hits.
Facts.
I kind of have to lean towards Pereira because I don't think they're going to the ground. I think it's going to be a stand-up fight. But I've met Jamahal Hill a couple of times. I mean, I've met both of them a couple of times, and I'm cool with them like that. I'm not super close, but I'm pretty cordial and cool with them. I don't know though, honestly. What's the odds?
So Pereira's -135 and Jamal's +115.
Yeah, and it'll probably be even by the time fight time comes. It's a hard one to pick, man. If I have to flip a coin, I'll say Pereira.
Zhang Weili or Yan Xiaonan?
I don't know much about the other girl. I know a lot about Weili, but what is the other?
The other one, she's the other badass Chinese female fighter that
she just knocked out.
Yeah, she just knocked out Jessica Andrade her last fight.
I did watch that. I still like Weili.
Okay.
No, the girl, she's the girl with the sidekicks, right?
Yeah, sidekicks to the face, her.
Oh my goodness, she's good.
She's real good.
These are close fights. These are very close fights.
You want me to tell you the odds on that?
What's the odds?
Weili's -500, Xiaonan's +375.
Oh wow. What? You know what? I probably say Weili, but I would take a risk on that. I would take a small bet on that for those type of odds on the other girl.
Yeah, man. Justin Gaethje or Max Holloway?
I think Gaethje. I think he's too athletic and hits too hard. As good as Max is, he's not a big puncher, and it's hard to. It's like I just talked about Sadiq. It's hard to just run up on him and throw volume. It's hard to run up on Gaethje and throw volume as athletic as he is, and as much as hard as he hits. So it'll be interesting to see if Max Holloway can still throw some volume and land those shots without getting caught clean. And I'm going to go with Gaethje. I think he'll win.
Charles Oliveira or Arman Tsarukyan?
I like Arman. I think that Charles Oliveira is, I think that he's getting a little older. He hasn't lost a step, it doesn't seem, but that's just a good matchup. I don't think Oliveira can submit him, and I think that they may go to the ground. I don't know. Yeah, I like him. I like Arman.
Bo Nickal or Cody Brundage?
I'm Bo Nickal. I'm not betting against Bo Nickal. I mean, it would have to be extreme grappler. I like Bo Nickal for sure.
You know what the odds are, Vic?
What is it?
-2,500.
Yeah. I'm not until he fights someone like legit. There's no way I'm betting against Bo Nickal.
Jiri Prochazka or Aleksandar Rakic?
How long has it been since Jiri fought?
So Jiri fought against Alex Pereira in December, but Rakic hasn't fought since 2022.
Oh, wow. I like Jiri too. I like him, man.
He's the underdog.
What's the odds there?
He's just like +105.
I'll go with Jiri.
Aljamain Sterling or Calvin Kattar?
Hasn't Calvin Kattar been beat on the ground before?
Kind of. I mean, Zabit like took his back, but he hasn't like actually been like submitted or ran through. Usually when he loses, he's getting outpointed.
He's so big. You know what? I'm gonna go with Calvin Kattar.
Kayla Harrison or Holly Holm? I know you love some Holly Holm, and she's a big
love
underdog.
Holly. She's one of my favorite fighters.
Listen, she beat Ronda. Can she beat PFL Ronda?
She's like, the difference is PFL Ronda's bigger, PFL Ronda's younger.
Yeah.
So how Holly Holm's like 42 now. Huh? I mean, I've won Holly Holm to win. She's an amazing person, just a good human being, and I will always root for her. What's the odds?
So Holly Holmes plus 350.
Wow, I'll take the chance. I'll throw a little bit on those odds. Yeah, for sure. So I'll go with Holly.
Jalen Turner or Renato Moicano?
Turner, too big, too long.
Jessica,
and knows how to use his reach.
Yeah, he's real good. Jessica Andrade or Marina Rodriguez?
What's the odds?
So Jessica Andrade minus 135, Marina Rodriguez plus 115.
Yeah, I like Andrade on that one.
Jim Miller or Bobby Green?
I hate to say it because I don't like Bobby Green, but Bobby Green.
Cody Garbrandt or Davison Figueroa?
That's at 135?
Yeah, 35s.
Is this how many fights has Davison had at 135?
Just one. He beat Rob Font his last fight by decision.
Wow, that's a big win.
Yeah.
What's the odds on that fight?
So Davison's minus 300, Cody's plus 250.
Yeah. I mean, for them odds, I would take a chance, but I don't know. Probably Davison Figueroa.
Vic, I appreciate you, my man. So what you got coming up? Because I know you're killing it with the coaching. Are you still trying to go back to karate combat? Are you kind of done with that? Like, what's next for you, man?
I was going to fight a pro boxing fight next month, but I cut my finger really bad, so I don't know if it's going to be healed in time. But yeah, at the end of May, most likely May the 30th, Karate Combat's coming to Texas. They're coming to Austin, and me and one or maybe even two of my fighters are going to get on that card and all fight together. So that'll be dope. So last weekend of May, most likely I'm fighting for Karate Combat again.
Awesome, man. Well, we're rooting for you as always. They can follow you at James Vick MMA. Appreciate your time, my man, and enjoy the fights this weekend.
Yes, sir. Thank you, bro.
Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Jalen Turner, he's 14-7, taking on Renato Money Moicano, who's 18-5-1. And currently, they got it. Jalen Turner minus 230. The comeback on Renato Moicano is plus 195. And joining me to break down this lightweight matchup is longtime friend of the show, Kyle Marley. Big Marley, welcome back to Half the Battle.
Good to be here, man. No better card to be here for it. You gave me a good fight, too. A really tough one. But, goddamn, I am excited for this one, and it's on the prelims. Like, this is one where I would watch it as a main event on any fight night, really. But we get a prelims on UFC 300, so I'm pumped for this one. And I've really been going back and forth on it, too, to be honest with you, which tells me that it's dog or pass, because I do think that Moicano's super live in this fight. I think the most likely outcome, though, is that he gets knocked out at some point. If he can't land takedowns, I just think he's going to be in trouble, man. Turner is just dangerous on the feet. He's long, he's powerful, he strikes at a high pace. He's going to be pressuring Moicano. So I think more times than not, Turner wins this fight by knockout. But at like minus 240, I mean, I don't want to say he's knockout or bust, because this guy could win a decision if Moicano's chin just holds up and he can't land knockouts. I do think that Turner's going to get the best of him on the feet. So I'm not going to say that he's knockout or bust, but that is his most likely outcome. I mean, his best path to victory anyways. And if this fight goes the distance, I would much rather be holding that Moicano ticket personally. And if he can just fight like he did against Drew Dober, I think he's super live to win a decision here. He could submit Turner really in any round, but Turner's never been submitted before. So I've been looking at all these props that they have out for us, and I was like, okay, I think Turner probably wins by knockout. Give me some plus money on that. But it's minus 140. We're paying a 58% line on Turner by knockout, so I don't see any value there. I was like, okay, what's round one looking like? And now that's plus 125. So they're saying he wins 45% of the time in round one, and that's tough. I can't really get any value out of that either. So I think my favorite bet right now, I actually don't hate Moicano money line, but Moicano wins by decision plus 500. That's like 16.5%, something like that. I think he wins by decision more than 16% of the time. So that is my favorite bet on the board for this fight, is that Moicano gets at least 2 rounds by getting takedowns and winning the fight on the ground, having that chin hold up and getting it done on the scorecards. But yeah, for me, it's going to be dog or pass for that reason. But man, it's going to be a great one to target on DraftKings. If you guys play DFS, this is great for both sides because if Turner does win in the first round 45% of the time, he's going to score a whole lot of points that way. And then I think if Moicano wins at all, he's going to put up a big score because the majority of it's going to come on the ground, which is what we like to see on DraftKings. So great fight to target both sides of there. But for now, I'm leaning dog or pass on the money line. Who do you like in this one, man? I'm excited.
You know what's funny? I don't know if you remember this, but you were on Half the Battle back when Moicano fought this dude named Zubaira Tukhugov, and you actually bet Moicano at dog odds. We went head to head. I bet on Tukhugov, and it ends up being this split decision. Moicano ends up winning. So Kyle Marley is the guy that introduced me to Moicano, like back in the day. I think this is the same card that Stipe fought Fabricio Werdum for the belt in Brazil.
Dude,
and
we go back, huh?
Yeah, like Moicano had already beat that Tom Ninamaki guy via first round submission, but like we all thought Ninamaki wasn't that good. So he goes from Ninamaki to all of a sudden he's fighting Zubaira Tukhugov, who at the time was this stud Russian, comes from Habib's camp. I was like, yeah, give me the Russian. You're like, nah, dog. Moicano's live in Brazil. Moicano goes out there, wins a split decision. And then after that, I was like, okay, we're on the Moicano train now. And I bet him against Jeremy Stevens. We got the dog odds there, hit a split decision. And he's been a lot of fun to watch. You know, there's been some ups and downs when he's hit the top of the divisions, whether it was at 45 or 55, but he's definitely a top 15, top 20 guy established as far as I'm concerned. And the interesting dynamic in this fight, Kyle, is that oftentimes Moicano is used to being the longer guy. Interestingly enough, the last time that he wasn't the longer guy was actually his matchup against Jai Herbert, where Moicano went out there and he attempted 7 takedowns. He hit 5 of them. He ends up winning by rear naked choke. And I think that's got to be the approach here, Kyle Marley. I think that if he bangs with Jalen Turner, listen, anybody can knock anybody out. And you've seen Moicano go out there, outstrike Kattar. You've seen him drop Cub Swanson with a jab. And you've seen Jalen Turner be knocked out more than once. So, of course, Moicano does have a chance. However, I think that Jalen Turner has turned into something super dangerous on the feet. The way he uses his range, his distance, because it used to be a case when you watched him on Contender Series and some of his older fights, he'd kind of have that tall man's defense, leave that chin straight up in the air, would get into unnecessary exchanges, and would eat shots that he probably shouldn't be eating. But I feel like he's gotten a lot better about that. He's a lot more mature. His takedown defense has gone hell of a lot better since the days that I saw Matt Frivola take him down easily at this card right here, Holloway versus Poirier in Atlanta. So I do think that Jalen's been making improvements. That right hand he landed on Bobby Green from downtown. I mean, he had Bobby Green like, it was like that scene in Rush Hour.
You don't know who you messing with. We'll knock that yellow. Which one of y'all kicked me?
It's the shots you don't see coming that hurt the most. And Jalen Turner is so nasty and effective with his range that you think you're safe, and he can still tag you up with jabs, with straight punches, knees, kicks. So he's super dangerous. What I'm trying to say here is that if some sketchy situations happen, like in the Drew Dober fight in that second round, I think that Turner can put Moicano out. It's just that you saw the end of the second round of the Dan Hooker fight, and Dan Hooker had a deep rear naked choke locked in on Jalen Turner. And I'm telling you right now, if Moicano gets in similar situations, he's going to finish the fight. But I'd be remiss if I left out the fact that Dan Hooker had to overcome some serious stuff to get to that point. And we know that Dan Hooker's got a legendary chin. One big criticism of Moicano is people say his durability isn't the best. So I'm not convinced that Moicano can survive those same spots that Dan Hooker did to get Turner in a very vulnerable position, like taking his back and potentially finishing the fight. So I think that Turner's catching Moicano at a great time. Had this been a few years ago, I would have been on the dog odds, but I think that Turner has finally reached the level of maturity where he can get past a seasoned, experienced, and just high-level opponent like Moicano, and I think he can do it impressively too. I've been very, very just almost blown away by the progression of Jalen Turner. Like, you look at the 2 fights that he lost recently, the 2 split decisions to Gamrot and to Hooker, and both could have gone his way, but even if you don't count them as wins for him, I still saw progress in both those fights. I still saw a big step in the right direction. I still saw a bona fide top 15 guy. So I think this is another good matchup for him. We know the threats here, but man, I think that Turner is going to find a way to land a straight on the button. So I'm going Jalen Turner here, probably by knockout. And it just sucks. You told me the price. I mean, I ain't laying no, what was it? -125, -140 for a knockout. Fuck that.
Yeah,
dude.
-140 for the knockouts. Yeah, that's what I was hoping. I was like, give me a good number on that. Maybe that's the way to approach this. But I mean, ultimately, my biggest investment on this fight is just going to be both sides of them in lots of different lineups, because I think that the winner of it has a good chance of being on the ultimate. I mean, I think it's like 200K up top, something big this week. So I feel like the winner will be on that, and I'm going to be targeting heavily. I think Moicano by decision or Turner by knockout. I really don't even know what I'm going to put as my official prediction for this one yet, but those are what I'm leaning with. But if I had to bet anything right now, Moicano by decision +500. That looks the best to me.
What's Turner by sub? Because I know that's like, that sounds ridiculous, and like Moicano is a serious black belt, but
that'd be nuts.
If Turner can drop him, and then he's got these extremely long limbs, if he can snatch a neck, what's that price looking like?
It's +750, not as much as I thought. So that's like almost 12%.
Okay, I thought it'd be a bit wider than that. I guess they're kind of thinking the same thing too. So before I let you go, Kyle, you mind giving a quick pick for every fight? I'm doing that with all my guests. I just tell you the matchup. You don't got to give any analysis. Just give your pick. Sound good?
I can try to. I've only looked into 3 other fights so far, though, but I could just wing it, I guess.
Perfect. All right. Alex Poatan versus Jamahal Hill.
Jamahal Hill.
Let's go. Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan.
Weili.
Boo. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway.
Gaethje.
Charles do Bronx versus Arman Tsarukyan.
Ooh, these are both of my guys. I actually don't even know what I'm going to do. I don't think I've ever picked against do Bronx. So for now, I'll say do Bronx. But by the time I end up doing it, I don't know what I'm going to end up picking. I'm big on Arman. This is one where I was like picking Oliveira to be a future champ way back in the day. Finally happened. But I've been saying that about Arman for a long time now too. So I think it's coming to fruition now. That's the tough one for me. But I'm going to say do Bronx just because I'm loyal.
Bo Nickal versus Cody Brundage.
Cody. No, I'm just kidding. Bo Nickal.
Are you going to lay 25 units to win one?
No, but I might throw him in some DraftKings lineups.
Hey, just pick winners, bro. Jiri Prochazka versus Aleksandar Rakic.
I'm definitely going to have to look into that one, actually. That's seems like a pick 'em to me. I feel like Jiri is like a wild enough, though, that Rakic could knock him out, but Rakic isn't aggressive enough. I don't know. I'm going to have to go back and watch the recent fights. Right now, I'll say with Rakic.
Sterling versus Kattar.
Another tough one I'm going to have to look into. I'm going to side with Sterling. Damn, it looks like his odds have been going up. I was looking at him like -140 range and thinking maybe he'd be playable, but -170, I don't know about anymore.
Kayla Harrison versus Holly Holm.
Harrison. I haven't seen a lot of her film yet because I'm not mostly a UFC guy at this point, so I got to go back and watch her, but wrestling heavy seems like a good style to take.
Diego Lopez versus Sodiq Yusuff.
Whoo. I don't know, man. I've been going back and forth on this one. I almost want to side with the dog at this point. I was thinking Lopez like 2 days ago, and then yesterday I switched to Yusuff. I'm going to be looking into it tomorrow, but right now I'll side with the underdog.
Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez.
God damn, dude, this card is so tough. I'm going to side with Andrade.
Jim Miller versus Bobby Green.
At those odds, I'm going to go with Jim Miller.
So you think he's going to be the first man in UFC history to win at UFC 100, UFC 200, and UFC 300?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I would say if it was a pick'em, I would lean with Green, but I think it is a little bit closer to a pick'em than these odds look like. So I got to go dog or pass.
And last but not least, Davison Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt at 135 pounds.
Got to go with Figueiredo there. I think it's knockout or bust for Cody.
My man, Big Marley. Y'all follow my boy Kyle Marley at Big Marley 3. Kyle, anything you want to tell the fans before I let you go?
No, man. We'll have a free show DFS wise over at Ship It Nation YouTube. You can in all sports. This is Masters Week, so it's going to be a huge DFS week. We got some of the best players in the world over at ShipItNation.com. Hit me up on Twitter. We'll get you a promo code, save you like 15%. But I think you guys will like it. ShipItNation.com. free show on Friday.
Now, next up in the strawweight division, we got a matchup between Jessica Andrade. She's 25-12, taking on Marina Rodriguez, who's 17-3-2. And currently, they got it. Jessica Andrade minus 135. The comeback on Marina Rodriguez is plus 115. And joining me to break down the strawweight matchup is the 2023 Half the Battle Handicapper of the Year. I'm talking about Mr. Pepe Sylvia. Pepe, welcome back to Half the Battle.
What's good, brother? Thanks for having me on again, and looking forward to breaking this fight down. This fight was one of the more intriguing ones on the card, and number one, I love capping WMMA. I love betting on it. I seem to do decent on it. And number two, the odds were very close, and I love those fights. Kind of seem like harder puzzles to solve, because when there's a huge favorite, there's a lot of easy assumptions that can be drawn just from the line. It's usually kind of fairly obvious. Doesn't always turn out that way, but when these closely lined fights are always more fun for me to break down and look into and see if I can find an edge. So I was excited to look into this one.
It's funny because when we talked about it, it was minus 110 a piece, and you were already intrigued. Now we're looking at minus 135 with a plus 115 comeback on Marina. What do you think about the line movement?
I'm not going to say it has something to do with me, but
so it had something to do with you.
We'll say the market is kind of agreeing with my sentiment, and I'll get to my explanation now. So it's a very interesting matchup. Two of the most entertaining girls of the division. Jessica Andrade has had like such an incredible career, like truly one of a kind, the way she's jumped around the divisions, had success in all of the divisions. And it's kind of crazy how she's kind of effortlessly flowed throughout 115 to 135. And I think most people can agree that 115 is definitely the division for her. She's a bit outsized at 125. And her physicality really shows a lot more at 115. So I like 115 a lot for her. And yeah, like I said, she's had a great career. And then when you look at Marina Rodriguez, I think she's had a lot. She came into the UFC with a good amount of hype, and the market has respected her quite a bit, and she's lost as a big favorite multiple times. And I think it's kind of cooling down on her. And I kind of agree why. So first off, we'll start Andrade has had such a way longer career, has fought the better competition, yet she's 4 years younger than Marina. I was kind of surprised to see that, to see Marina's 36 and Andrade is 32. But with the 4-year age difference, Marina is going to be taller. She's going to be longer. She's definitely the cleaner striker on the feet. But what you notice on tape is that Andrade is the much more physical fighter. And I think there's a lot of, this is a pretty volatile fight, I will say, because of the mixed results that we've gotten from Andrade. There's some fights that she looks absolutely amazing and she buzzes through fighters. And then there's the Xiaonan fight where, she fought super reckless and, her chin couldn't hold up. But what I factor into her recent run where she had lost multiple fights in a row was that the strength of schedule was super high. She's fighting Tatiana Suarez, Yan Jianan, Aaron Blanchfield on short notice. So I think a lot of people called into question her seriousness into the game, and she shut up a lot of people in the Mackenzie Dern fight when she just beat the shit out of her. And she did so as a plus 185 underdog. A lot of people were writing her off, saying she's done. And I will say, well, it was a great performance. Mackenzie Dern, a lot of people can outstrike Mackenzie Dern easily and finish her at this point, I think. So there are a lot of question marks on the Andrade side. But the reason why I think I give her the slight advantage, basically I cap her at 60%, minus 150. So when the line was pick 'em, I put a small bet, like nothing huge, because I know there's a lot of volatility with this fight. The reason why I did so was because I think Marina lacks the power to really deter Andrade. And while Andrade's striking is so poor that she could potentially get knocked out, I don't really rate that very high. And I think the way Marina is going to have to close distance, it will lead to Andrade being able to land her own power shots and potentially get grappling going, take her down. Like we saw in the Rose fight, she picked her up and slammed her. And Marina is like one of the less physically imposing girls of the division. She goes down really easy. Amanda Lemos pretty much exposed her. Like, not only did she get her down super easy, she held her down very easy. Anytime that she felt the power coming from Amanda Lemos, it really deterred her from getting any kind of volume off, and eventually led to her just kind of wilting in there. You could say it's an early stoppage, but she pretty much quit without actually quitting. So I think Andrade has the potential to land a power shot and get some kind of knockout. I think she has the potential to get a submission. I don't really rate it that high, but I also think she has a lot of decision equity just from her aggressiveness, getting takedowns. And people might say, oh, she hasn't gone for takedowns in many fights, but you have to look at who she's fighting. You know, she's not going to go for takedowns against Tatiana Suarez, Erin Blanchfield. The last time she had a pretty big grappling advantage was against Chookagian. This minus the Yan Jianan fight, but that lasted 2.5 minutes. When she fought Chookagian, she went for 2 takedowns. She got both takedowns. And I rate Chookagian's defensive grappling, a lot better than Marina. So no, she didn't get a lot of top time, but Chookagian's a lot better from bottom than Marina. So I think her getting top time is a real possibility here.
Yeah, one thing about Marina, and I'm glad you brought up not just the takedown defense, but the get-up game too, is like you look back at that fight against Randa Marcos, you look at that fight against Cynthia Calvillo. I mean, Marina was clean up 2-0 in both those fights and then gets 10-8'd in the third round in both those fights, causing them to be draws. So I was very frustrated as a Marina bettor in both of those fights. And even the loss against Carla, another frustrating one where, you know, Marina had the more damage, but she just gave up way too much top control. And man, the Yan Xiaonan fight, dude, that's the best bet I've ever made that didn't cash. A plus 270 on a split decision in Yan Xiaonan there. And they gave it to Marina. Very, very frustrating. But listen, I think on the outside, though, Marina is going to have some success. You mentioned how Marina might have to close the distance. I'm curious about what you mean by that, because like Jessica's the much shorter person here with the way shorter reach too. Like, isn't she going to be the one that has to close the distance?
Well, I just don't think she's going to want to be like that close to her all the time, because then it's going to open up the grappling for Jessica to go and get takedowns. So I think based on what I was seeing from the Lemos fight, she's going to kind of like just kind of try to point and skirt around the edge of the octagon, use her better footwork to kind of just stick and move. But I noticed like a lot in a lot of her fights, she kind of fights in bursts. Like she'll kind of they both kind of fight in bursts. So I don't know. I'm curious to see how the striking will go. I think Marina will be able to land more volume just because she's got a lot better defense than Andrade. Like one of the biggest knocks on Andrade is her defensive striking is pretty bad. Her head movement is kind of weird. Especially lately, it hasn't been as good as it used to be, I think. So yeah, I do give credence to Marina being able to just like outpoint her and outstrike her and just skirt and move and use her better footwork. But I do think at some point they're going to crash the pocket together, and Andrade will be able to land. And I think she's going to be able to land harder, and she's going to go for takedowns too.
Yeah, I mean, if she goes for takedowns, then she's not going to just be like, you know, a minus 150 like you cap her. She'll be like way larger favorite than that if she goes for takedowns here. And I think you brought up a good point about, maybe she hasn't gone for takedowns lately, but like, look at the matchups, right? Blanchfield, Tatiana, et cetera, et cetera. And also, I was guilty of counting out Andrade last year. One of the most profitable angles up until the Dern fight was fading Andrade that year, plus 160 against Xiaonan, plus 160 against Blanchfield. And then, the Dern fight, I mean, she showed she still got it. And now she's back to the favorite role, but only a slight favorite. And also, she looked incredible against Lauren Murphy early last year as well.
Right.
So, I think I jumped the gun on thinking that she was done. And the thing with Marina, you brought up a good point. She's 36. Like, it's crazy how, like, out of nowhere, she's already, like, close to 37, man. But I do think on the outside, that's where Marina's going to have her success, man. She's got, a 3-inch reach advantage? Not as much as I thought. 5-inch height advantage. So, I mean, from the outside with those long shots, popping the jab, circle, straight kicks, stuff like that. But in boxing range, I got Andrade. In the clinch, I got Andrade. Well, not the Muay Thai clinch, but just the standard clinch. And on the mat, I got Andrade. So,
yeah, another thing that I forgot to bring up before was that Jessica Andrade is a really good leg kicker, and Marina has shown that she's kind of weak to the legs. So I could see that as a possible angle for her getting damage off and slowing Marina's movement down. And also, Marina does use some kicks, and Andrade she tries to catch kicks whenever girls try to kick at her. So I could see her using that as a potential angle to catch a kick and get her down also.
Yeah, her nickname Bata Estaka stands for pile driver. So hopefully he goes
well,
out here.
How good would it be if we saw like a vintage Andrade slam?
Yeah, I mean, you remember not just the Rose fight where she knocked her on her head, but like even like the Tisha Torres and the Claudia Gadelha fights, like first round, she was getting lit up in both those fights. But like at some point, like those girls like gassed and almost broke from like hitting this girl consistently. And then Andrade just took over and destroyed them both. And I did feel like that Lemos fight against Marina was almost like a sign that Marina might be declining a little bit. I don't want to speak too soon because I spoke too soon on Andrade. You saw she still got it. And Marina is capable of beautiful violence when she's at her best. So I do see a world where, Andrade gets hit a lot, bro. Like she blocks punches with her face. So there is absolutely a world where Marina can keep this on the outside, pick her apart, win a decision, or get a TKO. But I do agree with you that up close or on the mat is going to favor Andrade and then some. So should be a hell of a fight. Before I get you out of here, man, you down to give me a quick pick for every fight on the card? I'll name the matchup. You just give a quick
pick.
No
yeah. Because I wasn't prepared for this, but yeah, I'm down. I can do that.
Alex Poatan versus Jamahal Hill.
Hill.
Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan.
Just money line.
Yeah. Where's the money? Where's the value side?
Oh, Yan.
Let's fucking go. Justin Gaethje or Max Holloway?
Gaethje.
Charles DuBronx or Arman Tsarukyan?
Arman.
Bo Nickal or Cody Brundage?
Brundage.
Jiri Prochazka or Aleksandar Rakic?
Jiri.
Aljamain Sterling or Calvin Kattar?
Kattar.
Kayla Harrison or Holly Holm?
Kayla.
Diego Lopez or Sodiq?
Sadiq.
Jalen Turner or Renato Money Moicano?
Turner.
Jim Miller or Bobby Green?
That's tough. Bobby.
Davison or Cody Garbrandt?
I mean, value-wise, probably Garbrandt.
Pepe, I appreciate your time, my man. The fans can follow you at Pepe_Sylvia716. They can find you at fightnumbers.com. Anything else you want to tell the fans before I get you out of here?
No, man. I'm just super fucking excited for this card, and hopefully we can cash some more tickets this weekend.
Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Bobby King Green. He's 31-15-1, taking on Jim A10 Miller, who's 37-17. And currently, they got it. Bobby Green -175. The comeback on Jim Miller is +150. And joining me to break down this matchup between two lightweight legends is the 2022 Half the Battle Handicapper of the Year. Talking about Andrew Gombis. Andrew, welcome back to Half the Battle.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate you having me. It should be a sick card. Glad I got get the opportunity to talk about this fight between two UFC legends.
Oh, man, I'm really excited because, Andrew, they were supposed to fight twice before. And I'm not just talking about during the pandemic. I'm talking about all the way back in 2014. Jim Miller ends up fighting Yancy Medeiros instead the same night that John Jones beat Glover Teixeira. Jim Miller gets a first-round sub over Yancy Medeiros. Then they're supposed to fight during the pandemic. It doesn't happen again. Third time is going to be the charm at UFC 300, Andrew. And to take it a step further, Jim Miller is the only man in UFC history to compete at UFC 100, UFC 200, and now UFC 300. And to take it a step further, he won at both UFC 100 and 200. Will he complete the trifecta this weekend against the very skilled and experienced Bobby King Green?
Yeah, it's amazing that he's even been in the UFC that long, let alone like still winning fights. You know, he's won what 5 out of his last 6 fights. So it just really speaks to, you know, what kind of fighter and person he is. He's had like 40 fights in the UFC. Bobby Green must have had like 25 fights in the UFC by now. Miller's 40, Green's 37. Like they've both been there, done that. It's one of those fights where I think, like, technically, I think Bobby Green's the better fighter. I think I trust his cardio more. His striking stats are better. But he's coming off getting brutally knocked out. Like one of the worst stoppages I've ever seen. I'm sure you'd agree with me, against Jalen Turner, who's actually also on this card. And, you know, that was only 4 months ago. Like, it's not a lot of time for someone who's had that many miles on him. So that's a concern for me on the Green side. That being said, if you take a look at the level of competition that both of them have fought recently, I think the strength of schedule massively favors Bobby Green. Like I said, he fought Jalen Turner, Grant Dawson, Drew Dober, Islam Makhachev, Nasrat Haqparast, just to name a few in the last, 3 to 5 years. While Jim Miller, he's had some tough fighters in there, but he's also gotten some, for lack of a better term, layup matchups. Like he got Jesse Butler on short notice. He got Donald Cerrone on his way out of the UFC. Nicholas Moda, Eric Gonzalez. So I think while Miller has had a tremendous amount of success over the last couple of years, it's important to note who it's come against. Whereas on the flip side, Bobby Green's coming off of a loss, and he's lost a couple of fights in there, but, he's been fighting guys that are like top of the food chain. Like he fought Rafael Fiziev, he fought Islam, Drew Dober. So I'm picking Bobby Green in this fight, because, the difference between their striking stats is staggering. Their level of competition difference is staggering. But I'm also not counting Jim Miller out because, like I said, he's a grizzly vet. He's a savvy vet. He's going to come forward. Bobby Green, there's durability concerns coming off of getting knocked out. Jim Miller's got some good momentum. He's got the feel-good story of this being UFC 300, being on 100 and 200. So I'm really looking forward to this one. But ultimately, I'm going to pick Bobby Green to get it done.
So I was talking to Clint about this earlier. Do you think there's anyone on planet Earth that has an open parlay with Jim Miller at UFC 100, Jim Miller at 200, and now Jim Miller at 300?
No.
And the funny thing about it, too, is that at 100, he won by decision. At 200, he won by first round TKO. Now he just needs the sub to complete the trifecta. But, man, when they were originally supposed to fight in 2014, Bobby Green was actually the underdog. And that was right after Bobby Green cashed for me as a plus 250 dog against Josh Thompson. And I wanted to bet him as an underdog against Jim Miller too. Unfortunately, the fight didn't happen. Like, for two guys that are closer to the end than they are to the beginning, I think both of them are looking incredible. Like, I know that Bobby's coming off that knockout loss, and I do agree with you. Like, it was stopped way too late. It should have just been 1 or 2 follow-ups, and the ref should have stepped in. I don't understand what the deal was. Did he have Bobby King in his DraftKings lineup and he wanted to see if he could come back to life or something? Like, it was crazy, man. Up until that point, I thought he looked good against Jalen Turner. I thought he looked fast. I thought he caught Jalen a couple times. Prior to that, he cashed my biggest underdog play of last year against Grant Dawson. And he really has been doing his thing lately. So you love to see a guy that's in, the more mature stage of his 30s just entering the rankings. And Jim Miller has the exact same opportunity at 40 years old. He wins this fight, he's getting ranked. So you love to see stuff like that. And I got to give Jim a lot of credit because he looked a lot better against Gabriel Benitez than I initially remembered. Like, I went back and watched that fight last night, and I was like, damn, Jim's really going for it. Because, like, you remember, it used to be when Jim had the Lyme's disease that he's round 1 or bust. Round 1, he's hell on wheels, but after that, he kind of slows down. I felt like Jim really pushed the pace in the second and third rounds, ends up getting that third round finish. So I like how Jim looks at 40 years old. I like how Bobby Green looks at 37 years old. So 2 absolute studs, but in their prime, I was going for Bobby Green for a reason. I think there's too much speed, too much volume. And, you can't say too much experience because both guys are right up there. Obviously, either guy, they're so potent. I mean, Jim Miller can finish a fight at any moment. You know that. Ultimately, I do agree with you. I think Bobby's the slicker, quicker, and younger guy here. And for that reason, I'm going to pick him to win this fight. But, I mean, you can't act like you wouldn't shed a tear if Jim Miller had his moment either,
100%.
Yeah, so it's a great fight. I guess from a betting perspective and from a market perspective, I want your opinion on this because I was going to bet him in 2014 at plus 150, plus 160, plus 175. Now we're dealing with minus 175. Completely different ball game. Is there still value at the minus money on Bobby Green?
Yeah, I do think it is him or pass, but I have some hesitations just because, like I mentioned, there's some question marks, coming off getting knocked out. Also, Bobby Green, while he is very skilled and he does have those advantages that I mentioned, he does tend to fight close sometimes. So it does make me a little bit hesitant to, lay any kind of price on him. Like, I shouldn't say lay any kind of price on him. To lay this price on him, I do have a little bit of hesitancy. Like anything else, I have my price, but I just don't think it's quite there yet. I do think he's going to win, though. And if, you put a gun to my head and said bet aside here, it would be him. But I'm not involved with it right now. If the price came down a little bit more, I'd probably, I'd be intrigued and realistically considering it.
And one thing to your credit about him coming off that knockout loss, I want to say this. I'm not a doctor. I know you're not a doctor.
Yeah.
And I remember the time when Frankie Edgar got knocked out by Brian Ortega. He comes back literally 1 month later and 30-27's Cub Swanson. So, like, with these legends, you just never know. And this is a matchup both guys have been eyeing for years. So I can't wait. Before I let you go, man, can you give me a quick pick for every fight? I'm doing that with all my guests. I'll tell you the matchup. You just say your pick. No analysis necessary. That cool?
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
Jamahal Hill versus Alex Poatan.
Hill.
Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan.
Weili.
Boo. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway.
Holloway.
Charles DuBronx versus Arman Tsarukyan.
Tsarukyan.
Bo Nickal versus Cody Brundage.
Bo Nickal.
You laying 25 units to win one?
No, I think that's going to be a stay away from me.
Jiri Prochazka versus Aleksandar Rakic.
Rakic.
Calvin Kattar versus Aljamain Sterling.
Sterling.
Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison.
Harrison.
Diego Lopez Sodiq Yusuf.
Lopez.
Jalen Turner Renato Moicano.
Turner.
Jessica Andrade Marina Rodriguez.
Andrade.
And last but not least, Davison Dice Dugea Figueredo versus Cody Garbrandt.
Figueredo.
My man, I appreciate you. Y'all follow my boy Andrew at Bets and Picks MMA. Also, check out the Magic and Andrew podcast. Andrew, thanks for your time and good luck this weekend.
Thanks for having me, bro. I appreciate it. Good luck this weekend.
Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between the former flyweight champion, Davison Dice Dugea Figueredo. He's 22-3-1, taking on the former bantamweight champion, Cody Garbrandt, who's 14-5. And currently, they got it. Davison Figueredo minus 300. The comeback on Cody Garbrandt is plus 250. And joining me is MMA odds maker Nick Kalikas. Nick, welcome back to Half the Battle.
Dude, it's an honor to be here. UFC 300, this is a mega show, so I appreciate you having me on, man. Can't wait. This is, I mean, we're talking about the first fight of the night, and you're seriously talking about two former champions. I know it's been said, but if you really think about that, that's amazing. I mean, that's how stacked truly this card is.
It's crazy. I just hope people show up on time for the first fight. Like, I know people like to skip out until like the main card. And I get it. Like, not everyone's as hardcore of a fan as us, but for a card like this, show up early. Like, don't be a casual. Show up early.
Yeah, and you're a half hour early, get settled into the seat. That's 100%, man. Because it's going to be such an epic night. You know, there's like a popcorn. Get your popcorn ready. Fight after fight after fight. It's going to be tremendous. So
this is a really interesting matchup because both of them are at kind of like a crossroads in their career almost. You know, Davison Figueredo, I think his run at flyweight is done. You know, his weight cuts are just so brutal, man. The guy is massive for flyweight. He had to move up to 135. And honestly, I've been calling for him to move up for a long time. I mean, the guy missed weight in a couple title fights, which is not because, you know, the guy's skipping his runs or anything. He's just too damn big. The thing I've noticed about Davison, and I'm a hardcore Davison fan. I'm a Davison Figueredo truther. I think he's one of the best 25ers of all time. And when he's on, he's as good as anybody in the world. But the reason that there's so many hit and miss performances, like if you watch the 4 Moreno fights, I mean, that's a tale of 4 completely different people. Like Figueiredo looked amazing in the first and third fights, kind of like a head scratcher in the second and fourth fights. And I heard that the first and third, he trained in the United States at Fight Ready outside his comfort zone. And the other 2, he did in Brazil. Well, his move up to 135 pounds against Rob Font, where I bet him at plus 125 odds, he did that camp at Fight Ready. This one, he's back in his comfort zone in Brazil. Now, that's all narrative, Nick, but you have to lay minus 300 here. You know, you're not getting dog money like we did against Rob Font. And one thing about Cody Garbrandt, I mean, would you agree with me that biggest criticism for him is, you know, the durability, the chin, probably?
100%, man. It's a shame because Garbrandt has all the makings. I mean, just look at it. I mean, physically, he's got the look. He's got the technique and ability when he gets in the octagon to perform. He could fight you flashy. He can wrestle you. Dude, he's got it all. He's got everything. But it is that durability and it's that chin that's held him back for so long. And it's a shame, man, because I think this guy would have been wearing that strap for a long, long time if that wasn't the case. So there's just, unfortunately, there's not much you can do. I mean, once that chin's been checked and, you know, some fighters have an issue with it. And that is definitely the biggest issue, I think, for Garbrandt.
Because, I mean, he's only 32 years old. Like, it's not like this guy's old. And you watch his, like, fights and it's not like the technique isn't there either. And so I was talking to my jiu-jitsu professor about it this morning, right? And he's like, you know, he's Brazilian. So, you know, Brazilians root for Brazilians. But he was like, dude, if you have a glass jaw, like, look at what Alistair Overeem did, like, towards the latter part of his career. Like, he found a way to work around it. And my whole thing here is that, okay, so if Davison lands clean, it's probably going to hurt Cody. But the thing about it is, in order to crack a glass jaw, you must throw punches at that glass jaw. Trevin Jones refused to throw a punch. Brian Kelleher was out there, and he actually had part of the Pedro Munoz game plan. He was trying to chop down the calf of Cody Garbrandt, and I like that, and it was actually working. But like, you can't expose a glass jaw if you refuse to throw punches. And Brian Kelleher didn't throw any punches at that glass jaw. So here's my thing, man, because I had a different memory of how that Figueiredo Font fight actually went down. Like live, when I had money on him, every time he rocked Font, I was like, yes, like this looks great. But when I went back and rewatched it, Figgy would literally chill for like 4 minutes and 30 seconds of the rounds, like not do much. And then he would just rock Font with a jab and steal the round like that. It was nuts, Nick. Like going back, like it played out much differently than I remembered.
Yeah, and you know what? The other thing is you have to respect Garbrandt's power. I mean, there's no question about it. So you're going to be tentative. I don't care who you are. You know that guy hits like a truck and he can put anybody's lights out. That's what makes it dangerous betting 300. We're not talking about picking a fight here. You're talking about betting a fight. You have to lay 300 on Figueiredo. We all think he probably gets it done because he probably ends up knocking Garbrandt out. But again, if he's not throwing as much, you're right, absolutely. Sometimes he's in that phase where he's just a little bit too gun shy, and that's not a good thing at all. But I think that's automatically going to come into play here a little bit on both sides of it. I think, again, they're not going to be afraid to start, kind of throwing at each other, but at the same time, they're going to respect each other's power enough that there's going to be a lot of staring. There's going to be a lot of moments of, some conservative fighting, I think, as well. But once they start letting loose, holy cow, I think it's going to be fireworks for sure. There's no question about it. And if you have to kind of think who's going to win a firefight like that, it should be Figueiredo, you would think. But again, are you willing to pay minus 300? I have a hard time for me personally. I won't lay that chalk. It's almost tempting to go the other way, Garbrandt. And, I will be pulling for Garbrandt personally. I mean, I like the guy. I hope he continues this run. Like you said, you made a good point. Alistair Overeem. Another one I'll throw at you. Andrei Arlovski, dude. Andrei Arlovski was so freaking chinny. And again, he gets knocked out from time to time, but he found a way to fight smart, be a little bit more defensive, and, keep that chin covered a little bit. And so if Garbrandt could keep that defense at a high level, of course he could go out there and beat a lot of people. There's no question about it. But I just don't have a lot of confidence betting this fight. I would probably, if you're going to like Figueiredo, I would honestly, I know it's narrative, but I would look at the knockout prop, maybe not lay a lot of chalk there either, or just leave it alone, something like that, right? Or if you're going to take a stab at the dog, maybe bet Garbrandt by knockout, man. He's got that ability too. Don't sleep on him knocking anybody out. So difficult fight to bet where the numbers are, but it should be an awesome one.
It's all about the number at the end of the day, right? We're gamblers. And when Figgy was plus 160 to Moreno the third time, that's when I took him, because you think about it, the first time, wasn't he like minus 300, minus 400, something crazy?
Yes, he was 300-ish. Yep.
It was a draw. Then the next time he was a big favorite as well. He gets finished. The third time, then he's a plus 160 dog. Then I'm like, okay, here's where I like Figgy. He goes out there and he wins. And then the next fight, it was like a pick'em or whatever. And then the Font fight, he's plus 125. So I love Figgy at dog odds, but minus 300, for minus 300, it's going to be frustrating when you're screaming at your TV for Figgy to throw. Now, when he finally does throw, he's going to probably hurt Garbrandt. And there's also a chance that Garbrandt looks for a level change, and Figgy's got a nasty guillotine, dude. Like that guillotine he hit on Tim Elliott, and that he's attacked against other opponents. He can dangle off next too.
Oh, 100%. Good point, man. With those Moreno fights, that's what I bet Moreno in a lot of those fights against him. And I'll tell you, that was one concern I had too, because he could sink that guillotine against anybody. So I don't care if you have good submission defense. He's the type of fighter that's so slick with that guillotine choke, and he's got that power with the technique to go along with it. There's not much you could do. So if you could get out of that guillotine, you're definitely a special, unique individual, because most people cannot. So yeah, he's a dangerous guy, even on the ground.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page. It's probably going to be the power of Davison making the difference, but I'm not going to be surprised if it goes the other way, because as much as I love Davison, I also know that he's a hot and cold fighter. The way he looks when he's on is drastically different than the way he looks when he's not on. And I'm not saying he's not going to show up. This is UFC 300. I'm sure he's going to show up, but again, minus 300. That's where you gotta exercise a little caution.
I gotta say this too. I'm a little bit worried maybe he comes into this fight, like you said, he's back in Brazil in his comfort zone. Maybe he thinks, you know what, Garbrandt's chin can't hold up to my power. Maybe he takes him lightly a little bit. And then if you don't get Garbrandt out there, Garbrandt might not, he might outpoint him. It's not out of the question that this fight hits the scorecards, especially if they're going to stare at each other from time to time and respect each other. So, dude, you're making me kind of hesitate even more on the Figgy side of things, even a pick for crying out loud now. But yeah, no, I think you really have to consider all aspects of it for sure.
You said it well. It's not like we're talking about a pick 'em here. We're talking about minus 300 plus 250. That's the most important thing. And maybe we're overstating things. Maybe Davison just comes out here first jab, gets him on, a street that he doesn't know the name of, and finishes with a flying knee, right? You never know. But man, I did think that Kelleher performance was a step in the right direction from the Trevin Jones fight. I really did. The Trevin Jones fight was kind of more like the Overeem talk, wow, he's playing it so safe, trying to work around his chin. Whereas I felt like he took more risks in that Kelleher fight. And yes, that's a softer opponent compared to Figgy, of course. But with a guy like Garbrandt, you got to get his confidence back up. You got to get a couple tune-up fights under his belt, which is exactly what these last two fights were. Now you're putting him in against another former champion. So we're going to get to see if he's ready to make another run or not. Because like I said, he's only 32. Davison's 36. So that's why I'm hesitant. Because when the fight first got announced, I'm thinking, oh, Davison's just going to knock him out in the first round. And that might still be the case. But yeah, the price just has me super sketched out. And for a fact on this card, a lot of crazy and special stuff is going to happen.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, man. I think we're on the same page for sure. And so that means bettors out there, you got to be cautious about this fight for sure. Either pass it. Unfortunately, I know a lot of people don't want to hear pass, or look for a prop and just don't go crazy on it is my recommendation here.
So Nick, before I let you go, you down to do a quick pick on every fight on the card for me?
Sure. Let's do it.
All right. So Alex Pereira versus Jamahal Hill.
I'm going to go, I think it's dog or pass, so I'll go Hill.
Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan.
And you know what? Let me just say this too. As far as the picks go, especially because I do more shows these days, I've started using, you can pick and bet two different things. And this is why I'm saying this, because I would say here normally I'll go with Zhang as a pick, of course. But if I were to bet this fight, I would actually put my money on Yan. I'm just being honest with you here. So because I do the shows and I don't want to confuse people, this is just being 100% honest. I have kind of bit the bullet. And if I'm giving out, or if I'm saying that there's a dog situation here, I'll pick the dog. So I honestly think Zhang's going to win this fight pick-em wise. But as far as a pure pick goes, I would rather be on the dog side. So if all this makes sense to you, I don't know if I confuse a lot of people by trying to explain, the show narrative or whatnot, because I don't want people to be like, okay, you pick the dog, or you bet the dog, but you pick the favorite here. Again, betting and picking is two different things. So I've kind of tried to streamline it and just go straight and just kind of match up. If I, lean a dog or whatever at the betting window, I kind of pick that dog as well. So I'll pick Yan for the upset, as crazy as it sounds.
It's not crazy to me. You're talking to the guy that's literally bet her in every single UFC fight she's had. So why would I stop now at plus 400 in her title fight if I've literally bet her every single
Nice.
UFC fight? So
Love it.
I mean, from max betting her against Kylan Curran to most recently plus 160 against Andrade. So I can't stop here, Nick. I have no choice. I have to bet her here. It just is what it is. And then Hill, you already know how high I've been on Hill over the years. So Gaethje or Holloway?
A lot of respected buddies starting to come in towards Holloway. I get it, but I'll go Gaethje.
Oliveira or Tsarukyan?
Tsarukyan, man. I think he shines in this fight.
Bo Nickal or Cody Brundage?
Got to pick Bo Nickal. The price is insane. I mean, it could be. It's just always tough to bet Bo Nickal fights, but Bo Nickal.
So, in other words, you're not laying 25 units to win one.
No thanks.
Jiri Prochazka versus Aleksandar Rakic.
I'll go with Rakic. I do. No disrespect to Prochazka, but I'm going to lean towards Rakic here. I think it's a good matchup for him.
Rakic has been a very popular pick. Everybody I've spoken to him, everyone I've spoken to has been on him. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Sterling versus Kattar.
You know what? I'm going to go with Kattar. I'm going to go with Kattar because it's one of those things for me that Aljo moving up the weight class, I think Kattar's getting a little bit disrespected. If Aljo is able to grind him out and utilize his ground game here, holy cow, then he's definitely going to have some success in this weight class. But I have to see it first, so I'll pick Kattar.
I like that. Holm or Harrison?
Obviously, you got to pick Harrison, man. I mean, you know what? I think Holm could give her a fight, though, especially if she keeps it on the feet. But that being said, I have nothing but respect for Harrison for coming over to the UFC. I mean, and just kind of wanting to prove herself. How could you not respect that? So go Harrison. I hope she accomplishes her mission.
Same, but listen, man, Holly Holm beat Ronda Rousey at plus 750. Can she beat PFL Ronda at plus 350?
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Holly Holm's a special fighter, man. People can knock on her all they want. I don't understand all the hate with Holly, man. I mean, obviously she's a very marketable fighter. That's why she keeps on headlining and she's doing all this stuff. People watch her. They want to tune in to watch her. Love, hate her, whatever the case may be. And she is one of the best female combat sports athletes of all times. There's no question about that, man. So I got nothing but respect for Holly. But that being said, come on, Harrison. I want to see Kayla get it done.
Diego Lopez or Sodiq?
I got to go with Yusuf, man. I mean, Lopez, I love the kid. He's a stud. He's getting better, but you got to prove it to me here again. And Yusuf's a tough cat, so I go with Yusuf.
Yeah, I mean, had the Barboza fight never happened, Yusuf would be favored here. But the question is, how deep do you look into that? Because in round one, Sodiq looked like the best fighter on planet Earth, and Sodiq's usually not a round one or bust kind of guy. So,
right,
I'm very curious what happened in that fight. Like Gianni always says, not to judge someone by their best performance or their worst performance, right? And so the thing about that Sodiq fight, and we're going off on a tangent, was like he really looked like the best fighter in the world in round one, and then rounds 2 through 5, I was like, what's going on here? And that's, like I said, he's won round 3 in multiple fights against Mike Davis, against Arnold Allen. Do you think he just kind of emptied the clip trying to finish? Got a little excited?
It was so weird. It was weird because you're right. I mean, you don't typically think that he's going to have as many issues as some of the other guys that have, cardio issues or whatever. So yeah, that was weird. I was expecting him to kind of be a little bit more consistent, and that was his time to shine. And he dropped the ball. But again, you said it yourself right here. If that fight didn't happen, or if he wins that fight, just think about it. This line would be drastically different. And here's the thing. Lopez is getting all the respect in the world. He's a popular fighter, very marketable, good looking dude. I mean, he's got it all right now, and he keeps on improving. So of course he's going to be the popular side. I mean, Yusuf coming off that setback, which didn't impress that much. And then Lopez is kind of seems like he's skyrocketing towards the top. So that's why you are seeing recency bias come into play here. And that's why I think it's a dog or pass situation. And I'll pick Yusuf.
Jalen Turner or Renato Money Moicano?
Wow, what a fight, man. You know what? I think you got to go with Turner, though. I think he does knock Moicano out. That chin, we talk about guys that, have problems sometimes. Dude, Moicano's another one of these guys that, more times than not, if his chin kind of lasted, he'd be way further ahead. And, we could be talking about him possibly wearing a strap. But against Turner, an ultra dangerous dude that could get it done, not a good matchup, I think, for him. I think Turner wins.
Jessica Andrade or Marina Rodriguez?
Wow, man, I've been kind of going back and forth on this one for sure, because again, now you're starting to see, not just recently, you've seen some glimpses in Rodriguez's tall woman defense. We say tall man defense at times, right? She's kind of got that tall chick defense, which bothers me because she's so damn good, man. She's like, Rodriguez, even her takedown defense, she survives against outstanding grapplers. I mean, you don't want to see those instances occur very often. Like, she gets herself in some spots sometimes, but she survives. She gets back. She's a phenomenal fighter. But the problem is here, she's fighting a girl in Andrade that could possibly get the takedowns and has that crazy power. So I guess I'm talking myself into it live on the show a little bit more. So on Andrade, but I'm not confident. I hope Rodriguez gets back on track, to be honest with you, because I would like to see her kind of make a real run towards that title. And I think Andrade just kind of had that, that limelight or whatever. But with all that being said, I still think the power and the matchup kind of favors Andrade, so I'll pick Andrade.
It's interesting because a lot of us, not everybody, but a lot of us, like myself, thought that Andrade was actually on her way out. Fading her was very profitable last year up until the Dern fight. That changed the narrative completely. Now she's back to favorite status again, which actually, now that I say that, she was a favorite against Yan Xiaonan and she was a favorite against Erin Blanchfield. I actually cashed both of them at plus 160. So she's really only been the dog against Tatiana and Mackenzie Dern. And now she's back in the favorite role. So it's interesting. Yeah, with Marina, man, I agree with you about that defense. And I agree with you about that takedown defense as well. Because offensively speaking, she's so damn good. She's incredible. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting fight. Jim Miller versus Bobby Green, wow. Jim Miller, 100, 200, 300. What do you think?
Oh, man. You know what? I'm going to pick Jim Miller because of that. And get another difficult one. It's hard. Obviously, styles make fights. And I honestly think that Bobby Green should be able to outpoint Jim Miller. You know what I mean? He should be able to keep this fight upright. It should be. But Jim Miller, he is the Cinderella man, whatever you want to say with this guy. I mean, just outstanding. And it's hard not to root for him every time. So I'll pick Jim Miller. I hope he keeps it rolling. And man, I hope we see Jim Miller. Obviously, it's going to not be true, but that's not the case. But UFC 400. Come on, Jim Miller. You can make it to 400.
Dude, Jim's getting better. I felt like that Gabriel Benitez fight, because there was a while there, when he had that 4-fight skid, when he lost to Trinaldo and Pettis and all this. People were thinking that Jim had to hang things up. People were thinking that after round 1, he gasses out and does all these things. And dude, that fight with Gabriel Benitez, he was strong for all 3 rounds. It's this guy's a fine wine. He gets better with time. So, and Bobby Green, I know he's coming off a brutal knockout loss, but firstly, Jalen Turner has some ridiculous physical attributes. And I thought Bobby actually looked good up until the knockout. And then his fight prior, he came through as one of the biggest dogs of 2023 against Grant Dawson. So even though it's 40 years old versus 37 years old, I think there's still a lot of tread left on the tire. Appreciate you, Nick. The fans can follow you at Fight Odds on UFC Fight Pass, The Gambler's Perspective, UFC On the Line. Anything else you want to tell the fans before we get out of here?
No, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate you. Yeah, like he said, make sure you check out. We have a lot of shows going on this week. I just did one with DraftKings as well with Anik and Cejudo, so make sure you guys check that out. We also have UFC On the Line. We have The Gambler's Perspective. And, of course, head over to MMAOddsbreaker.com and check that site out.
Well, my friends, we did it. It's going down this Saturday night live at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. Thank you all so much for your support. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Leave me a comment if you feel so inclined to share. I really appreciate that. Thank you to all the fans. Thank you to my amazing guests on today's episode. I hope you guys truly enjoyed it. I hope you all go out there, enjoy the fights, and have an amazing day and an amazing week. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.